Dustwater, Texas, 1883. A town where hope comes to die and secrets linger in the dust. Emma Wilson stands at the window of the Silver Dove, watching strangers arrive on the evening train, men with hungry eyes and heavy pockets. Her fingers trace invisible patterns on the glass, mapping escape routes she knows she'll never take. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 10 years in this gilded cage has taught her that freedom is just another pretty lie men tell before they take what they want. But tonight, as the Texas sun bleeds red across the horizon, a stranger arrives who doesn't fit the pattern. A man who looks at her and seems to see something no one has seen in years, the person she used to be. The Silver Dove isn't the finest establishment in Texas, but it's the crown jewel of Dustwater, a 3-story wooden structure with peeling white paint and windows that glow amber after sunset. Inside, velvet drapes and tarnished mirrors create the illusion of luxury, while upstairs, women with painted smiles and dead eyes wait in rooms that smell of cheap perfume and cheaper whiskey. This is where Emma Wilson has lived since she was 16, since the day her stepfather settled a gambling debt with the only thing of value he had left, her. The summer heat hangs heavy in the air tonight, making the worn silk of Emma's blue dress cling to her skin. She's 26 now, though customers often mistake her for younger. Mrs. Caldwell says it's a blessing, but Emma knows better. In a place like this, looking innocent just means they're willing to pay more to ruin you. She's learned to use it, to tilt her chin just so, to lower her eyes with practiced shyness. Every gesture, every word, a carefully constructed performance that keeps her alive, but never truly living. From her perch on the second-floor landing, Emma watches the evening ritual unfold below. The Silver Dove fills with the usual crowd, ranch, hands flush with wages, traveling salesmen far from watchful wives, local businessmen who nod respectfully to her in the brothel, but look through her on the streets. The piano player in the corner hammers out a tinny melody that barely rises, above the din of male laughter and clinking glasses. "You look like you're plotting someone's murder," Lucy whispers, appearing beside Emma on the landing. At 19, Lucy is the newest girl at the Silver Dove, still carrying the dangerous belief that her situation is temporary. Her red hair is pinned up elaborately, her freckled skin powdered almost white in the latest fashion. Emma offers a thin smile, just counting the hours. She doesn't specify until what, until the night ends, until her debt to Mrs. Caldwell is paid, until she's too old for this life and faces whatever comes after. All seem equally impossible. Lucy nudges her playfully. "Did you hear Ritter's cattle drive arrived today? 30 men with 3 months' wages burning holes in their pockets." "Wonderful," Emma replies, her voice flat. "Another night of whiskey, a breath and sweaty hands. Better than empty rooms and Mrs. Caldwell's temper." Lucy adjusts her bodice, pushing herself up to create more cleavage. Besides, cattle drive means new faces, maybe even a handsome one. Her youthful optimism would be endearing if it weren't so naive. Emma doesn't respond. She's long since stopped looking at faces. Men blend together after a while. Different shapes, different voices, but ultimately the same. They take what they want and leave nothing behind but crumpled bills and the lingering scent of desperation. In 10 years, she's never met an exception to this rule, which is why she notices him immediately. He enters without fanfare, stepping through the bat-wing doors of the saloon with the caution of someone unused to such establishments. Tall and broad-shouldered, he removes his hat as he enters, revealing dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. Unlike the other newcomers, he doesn't immediately scan the room for women or head for the bar. Instead, he stands, perfectly still, eyes carefully taking in his surroundings with the measured attention of someone who has learned the hard way that details matter. "Well now," Lucy purrs beside her. "Who is that?" "Trouble," Emma replies automatically, though she can't say exactly why. There's something about the way he stands, straight-backed and alert, even in his apparent exhaustion. He moves with the careful economy of a man who has known violence and carries its memory in his muscles. Mrs. Caldwell emerges from her office, a vision in purple satin despite the heat. At 45, she remains striking, her dark hair piled high, her face carefully maintained with expensive creams and powders. She's built the Silver Dove from nothing after her husband died under questionable circumstances 15 years ago. Some say she poisoned him. Emma believes it. Mrs. Caldwell is not a woman who leaves her fate in others' hands. "Welcome to the Silver Dove," Mrs. Caldwell greets the stranger, her voice honey smooth with the remnants of a southern accent she exaggerates when it suits her. "We don't often see new faces this late in the season." The stranger nods, his expression polite but reserved. "Ma'am, what brings you to our little corner of Texas, Mr. Hayes, Thomas Hayes?" He answers without elaboration. His voice is deep but quiet, forcing those around him to lean in rather than projecting to be heard above the din. Emma finds herself leaning forward slightly on the landing, straining to hear. There's something in his manner that doesn't fit. He's not drunk, not leering, not throwing money around to impress. His clothes are worn but clean, his boots dusty from the road. He carries himself like a man with purpose rather than pleasure on his mind. "And what can we offer you tonight, Mr. Hayes?" Mrs. Caldwell asks, gesturing elegantly toward the bar. "A drink, or perhaps—" Her eyes flick meaningfully toward the landing where Emma and Lucy stand. "More pleasant company?" Hayes follows her gaze, his eyes meeting Emma's for a brief moment. There's no hunger there, no immediate appraisal of her worth as merchandise. Instead, something closer to recognition passes between them, though she's certain they've never met. She would remember those eyes, the color of a storm-dark sky, intense and weathered. "Actually," he says, turning back to Mrs. Caldwell, "I heard you might need help with security. Been some trouble with the last cattle drive, I understand." Mrs. Caldwell's smile falters for just a moment before returning. "News travels fast. We had a disagreement with some rowdy customers last week. Nothing serious. 3 broken windows and a dislocated shoulder for your piano player isn't what I'd call nothing serious," Hayes replies evenly. Emma watches Mrs. Caldwell's face. Carefully. The madam doesn't like being contradicted, especially not by a stranger. But she's also practical to her core. The Silver Dove had indeed suffered during the last drive when a group of drunk cowboys decided they deserved more than they'd paid for. Their existing security, a burly but aging former boxer named Miller, had been overwhelmed. "You have experience with such matters?" Mrs. Caldwell asks, her voice cooling slightly. "Yes, ma'am, I do." Again, no elaboration. Mrs. Caldwell studies him for a long moment. "And your rate?" "Room, board, and $5 a week." It's a modest request, especially for someone of his obvious capability. Emma can see Mrs. Caldwell working through the calculation, the cost of hiring him versus the cost of another incident like last week. "Very well, Mr. Hayes. A trial period." Her smile returns. "All business now. Miller will show you the premises. You'll be expected to keep order, remove troublemakers before they become problematic, and ensure the safety of my girls at all times. Is that clear?" "Perfectly." "Good. Miller," Mrs. Caldwell calls, and the aging security man appears from the back room. "Show Mr. Hayes around and explain his duties. He'll be joining us." As Miller leads Hayes toward the back of the establishment, the stranger glances up again at Emma. This time, his gaze lingers a moment longer than necessary, and she feels an unfamiliar sensation creep up her spine. Not fear, Not desire, but something more unsettling. Curiosity. "He didn't even look at the other girls," Lucy whispers, sounding almost offended. "Just you." "He's not here for that," Emma replies, though she's not entirely convinced. "Every man who walks through these doors wants something." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The question is what Thomas Hayes is really after, and why that question bothers her so much. Later that night, after the Silver Dove's patrons have either selected their companions for the evening or staggered back to their lodgings, Emma sits at her vanity, removing the pins from her hair. Her room is small but private, a privilege earned through years of being Mrs. Caldwell's highest earner. The walls are papered in faded blue flowers, the furniture solid but worn. It's not home, but it's the closest thing she's had since she was 16. A knock at her door makes her tense. The house rules are clear. Once customers have gone, the women are left alone until morning. Emma rises, wrapping her dressing gown tighter around herself. "Who is it?" she calls, one hand reaching for the small knife she keeps hidden in her vanity drawer. "Mrs. Caldwell," comes the reply. "Open up, Emma." Emma tucks the knife into the pocket of her dressing gown before opening the door. Mrs. Caldwell stands in the hallway, still fully dressed despite the late hour. Behind her looms the tall figure of Thomas Hayes. "Emma, dear," Mrs. Caldwell says, with the false warmth she reserves for special customers, "Mr. Hayes needs suitable accommodation, and we're rather full with the cattle drive in town. You have the largest private room, so you'll be sharing with Lucy for the next few days." Emma's eyes narrow slightly. The Silver Dove has several empty rooms. They're never at full capacity except during the height of drive season, which has already passed. "This is about something else." "Of course," she replies, because arguing with Mrs. Caldwell never ends well. "I'll collect my things." "No need for that," Mrs. Caldwell says. "Mr. Hayes will only need the space for sleeping. During the day, the room remains yours." Emma glances at Hayes, trying to read his expression. He seems uncomfortable with the arrangement, his jaw tight, eyes avoiding hers. "It's not necessary," he says quietly. "I can make do with—" "Nonsense," Mrs. Caldwell interrupts. "Emma understands, don't you, dear? Mr. Hayes is providing an important service to our establishment." The implication is clear. Emma's comfort is secondary to keeping their new security man happy. Still, something doesn't add up. If Mrs. Caldwell wanted to reward him, there are easier ways than displacing her best girl. "Of course," Emma repeats, stepping back from the door. "I'll go to Lucy's room now." As she moves to pass them, gathering a few personal items in a small bag, Mrs. Caldwell places a hand on her arm. Her fingers dig in slightly, a warning. "Mr. Hayes is not to be disturbed during the day for any reason," she says, her voice pleasant, but her eyes hard. "He works nights and needs his rest. Understood?" "Yes, Mrs. Caldwell." Only when she's halfway down the hall does Emma realize what feels wrong about the situation. Mrs. Caldwell isn't trying to reward Hayes. She's trying to isolate him. By putting him in Emma's room, away from the other girls and customers, she's keeping him separate from the daily life of the Silver Dove. The question is why? Emma slips into Lucy's room, finding the younger woman already asleep, her red hair spread across the pillow. The room is smaller than Emma's, with barely enough space for the single bed they'll now have to share. She places her bag on the floor and sits on the edge of the bed, mind racing. Thomas Hayes is not what he seems. Neither is Mrs. Caldwell's interest in him. For 10 years, Emma has survived by keeping her head down, by becoming invisible except when required to be seen. Curiosity is dangerous in a place like the Silver Dove. And yet, as she lies down beside Lucy in the narrow bed, sleep eludes her. Instead, she finds herself wondering about the storm-eyed stranger and why his arrival has unsettled the careful balance of her world. The next morning, Emma rises early, slipping out before Lucy wakes. The Silver Dove is quiet at this hour, the saloon empty save for Miller sweeping up last night's debris. She pauses at the door of what was her room, listening. Silence. Either Hayes is a quiet sleeper, or he's already gone. She continues downstairs, heading for the kitchen at the back of the building. Mrs. Caldwell insists her girls eat well. No one wants a woman who rattles when she moves, she often says. The cook, an elderly Mexican woman named Rosalinda, who speaks little English, nods at Emma as she enters. Buenos dias, Emma says, one of the few Spanish phrases she knows. Rosalinda smiles, pushing a plate of eggs and biscuits toward her. Emma takes the plate to a small table in the corner and eats quickly. She's nearly finished when a shadow falls across her plate. She looks up to find Thomas Hayes standing in the doorway, hat in hand. In the clear morning light, she can see him better than she could in the dimness of the saloon. He's older than she initially thought, perhaps in his late 30s, with lines etched around his eyes and mouth that speak of hard years. A scar runs along his jawline, old and faded, but still visible. Miss Wilson, he says with a slight nod. I apologize for the disruption last night. Emma is momentarily startled that he knows her name. She doesn't recall anyone introducing them. It's fine, she replies, her voice deliberately neutral. Mrs. Caldwell's house, Mrs. Caldwell's rules. He hesitates, then asks, May I? Gesturing to the chair across from her. This is unexpected. The men who work at the Silver Dove, bartenders, security, the piano player, generally keep their distance from the women except when their duties overlap. It's an unspoken rule, one that keeps the boundaries clear. If you like, she says, curiosity overcoming caution. Hayes sits, placing his hat on the table between them. Up close, she notices a network of small scars on his hands, the kind that come from years of rough work or fighting or both. I wanted to assure you that I'll be looking for other accommodations in town as soon as possible, he says. I don't intend to impose. Emma studies him, trying to reconcile his courteous manner with the dangerous competence evident in his bearing. You're not from around here? No, ma'am. Where are you from, Mr. Hayes? Recently? Nowhere in particular. He meets her gaze, steadily. Before that, a lot of places. She waits for more, but he offers nothing else. Instead, he asks, How long have you been at the Silver Dove, Miss Wilson? The question is direct, verging on impertinent given their brief acquaintance. But something in his tone makes it seem more than idle curiosity. 10 years, she answers, surprising herself with her honesty. She usually deflects such questions from strangers. Something flickers in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or something darker. Since you were 16, she finishes for him. Old. Enough. Not by law. Emma gives a bitter laugh. Law doesn't reach inside these walls, Mr. Hayes. Surely you know that. He's quiet for a moment, watching her with those unsettling grey eyes. Sometimes it should, he finally says. Before she can respond, the kitchen door swings open and Mrs. Caldwell enters. She stops short at the sight of them sitting together, her eyes narrowing slightly. Emma, she says, her voice sharp, Lucy is looking for you. Something about borrowing. A dress for tonight. It's a clear dismissal. Emma rises, taking her plate to the wash basin. Good day, Mr. Hayes, she says without looking back at him. As she passes Mrs. Caldwell, the older woman grips her arm, whispering, Remember your place, girl. Men like him aren't here for conversation. Emma nods dutifully and continues upstairs, but her mind is working frantically. Men like him. What did Mrs. Caldwell mean by that, and why was she so concerned about them talking? She finds Lucy in their shared room, still in her nightdress, hair unbrushed. There's no mention of borrowing a dress. "What did he say to you?" Lucy asks immediately, eyes wide with excitement. "Who?" "Don't play dumb, Emma. The new man, Hayes. Everyone's talking about him." Emma sits on the edge of the bed. "There's nothing to talk about. He apologized for taking my room." Lucy leans forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Miller says he used to be a Texas Ranger." This gives Emma pause. The Rangers have a mixed reputation in these parts. Respected for their skill, feared for their ruthlessness. If Hayes was a Ranger, it would explain his alertness, his scars, the way he carries himself. "Former," Lucy continues, "left under some kind of cloud, according to Miller. No one knows exactly what happened." "How does Miller know anything about him?" Lucy shrugs. "They talked while going over the security arrangements. Hayes didn't say much, but Miller recognized his gun. Some special Colt that Rangers use." Emma tries to appear uninterested, though her mind is racing. "It doesn't matter who he was. He's just security now." "For now," Lucy agrees with a smile that suggests she's thinking of ways to make his stay more interesting. "But don't you wonder why someone like that ends up here? In Dustwater of all places?" Emma does wonder, more than she'd like to admit. Texas Rangers don't just happen upon tiny towns like Dustwater, and they certainly don't take jobs as security at brothels unless they're running from something or looking for something. "Just be careful around him," Emma warns more sharply than she intends. "Men with secrets are dangerous." Lucy rolls her eyes. "All men have secrets, Emma. That's what makes them interesting." Emma doesn't argue. At 19, Lucy still believes in possibilities, that the right man might walk through the doors of the Silver Dove and change everything. Emma had believed that once too. She knows better now. But as she helps Lucy prepare for the day ahead, brushing out her red hair and discussing which dress will attract the most attention tonight, Emma finds her thoughts returning to Thomas Hayes and the question no one seems able to answer. What is a former Texas Ranger doing in a place like this? The day passes slowly, as days at the Silver Dove often do. The women are free until late afternoon, when preparation for the evening begins. Bathing, dressing, arranging hair into elaborate styles. Emma helps the newer girls with their cosmetics, teaching them how to use powder and rouge to highlight their features without looking garish. "Not too much," she tells a young blonde named Sadie, gently wiping excess rouge from her cheeks. "Men want to believe they're bedding a lady, not a painted doll." "Mrs. Caldwell says I need more color," Sadie protests. "She says I'm too pale." "Mrs. Caldwell wants you to stand out," Emma replies. "But trust me, subtlety will serve you better. In the long run, let them think they're discovering something no one else has seen." It's advice Emma has lived by for years, appearing just slightly different to each man who buys her time, becoming whatever fantasy they need for a few hours. She's been the innocent farm girl, the sophisticated widow, the experienced seductress. So many roles that sometimes she wonders if there's anything left of the real Emma Wilson underneath. As the women dress for the evening, Emma selects a gown of deep green silk, one of her favorites, though the style is a few years out of date. The color brings out the gold flecks in her hazel eyes, and the cut emphasizes her slender waist, while displaying just enough décolletage to attract attention without appearing desperate. "You look beautiful," Lucy says, admiring her as Emma pins the last strands of her chestnut hair into place. "The mysterious Mr. Hayes won't know what hit him." Emma frowns. "I'm not dressing for him." "Of course not," Lucy replies with a knowing smile. "But you've thought about him today. Don't deny it." Before Emma can respond, a commotion erupts downstairs. Raised voices, the crash of breaking glass. The women exchange alarmed glances. It's early yet for trouble. The evening crowd has barely begun to arrive. Emma moves to the landing, Lucy close behind her. Below, two men, Trail hands, by the look of them, are facing off against Miller, whose aging frame seems suddenly inadequate against their bulk. "I said she promised," one of the men shouts, his words slurring. "Told me special price just for me." "No special prices," Miller insists, hands raised placatingly. Mrs. Caldwell sets the rates, and they're the same for everyone. The second man, taller and leaner than his companion, steps forward. "You calling my friend a liar, old man?" The tension in the room shifts, a current of danger running through it. Emma has seen this before, alcohol-fueled entitlement turning to violence when denied. Usually, Miller can diffuse these situations, but these men seem past reasoning, and the older security man is clearly outmatched. Just as the taller man grabs Miller by the shirt front, Thomas Hayes appears from the back of the saloon. He doesn't rush, doesn't raise his voice. He simply walks to the center of the confrontation and stops. "Gentlemen," he says, the word carrying clearly despite its soft delivery. "There seems to be a misunderstanding." The men turn toward him, momentarily distracted from Miller. "Who the hell are you?" the first one demands. "New security," Hayes answers, "and I'm asking you politely to let go of my colleague and leave the premises." The taller man laughs, releasing Miller with a shove that sends the older man stumbling backward. "You asking? What if we don't feel like going?" Hayes sighs, almost imperceptibly. "Then I'll have to insist." "You and what army?" The first man challenges, taking a step closer to Hayes. What happens next occurs so quickly that Emma can barely follow it. Hayes moves forward, seeming to barely exert himself as he grips the first man's arm and twists. There's a gasp of pain, and suddenly the drunk is on his knees, arm bent at an unnatural angle behind his back. The taller man lunges forward, but Hayes sidesteps with surprising grace, using the man's momentum to send him crashing into a nearby table. Before he can rise, Hayes has him by the collar, hauling him upright with one hand. "As I was saying," Hayes continues, his voice still calm despite the exertion, "it's time for you gentlemen to leave." He releases the taller man, who stumbles back, eyes wide with shock. The first man cradles his arm, all bluster gone from his expression. "Now," Hayes adds, the single word carrying more threat than any shouted curse. The men retreat, casting furious glances over their shoulders, but making no move to continue the confrontation. Hayes watches them go, then turns to Miller. "You all right?" he asks. Miller nods, rubbing his chest where the man had grabbed him. "Damn fools," he mutters. "Been causing trouble since they rode in yesterday?" From her position on the landing, Emma sees something pass between the two men, a look of professional assessment. Miller clearly recognizing that he's been replaced by someone far more capable. Mrs. Caldwell emerges from her office, drawn by the disturbance. She surveys the scene, the overturned table, scattered glasses, Hayes and Miller standing in the center of the room. "What happened?" she demands. Miller explains quickly, giving Hayes full credit for resolving the situation. Mrs. Caldwell listens, her expression calculating as she studies their new security man. "Well done, Mr. Hayes," she says finally. "It seems you're worth every penny." Hayes nods, accepting the praise without comment. As Mrs. Caldwell turns away, his gaze travels upward, finding Emma on the landing. Their eyes lock for an instant, long enough for her to see something unexpected in his expression. Not pride at his display of skill, not the satisfaction a man usually feels after asserting his dominance. Instead, there's a weariness, as if violence, even necessary violence, brings him no pleasure. It's this, more than his skillful handling of the drunks, that captures Emma's attention. In her experience, men who are good at violence enjoy it. The power, the fear it instills in others. Hayes seems different, and different is dangerous, because different makes her wonder, and wonder leads to hope, and hope is the one luxury she cannot afford in her carefully constructed life. As the evening progresses and the Silver Dove fills with the usual crowd, Emma moves through the room with practiced ease, smiling at regulars, listening to their stories, laughing at their jokes. But her awareness of Hayes never fades. He positions himself near the entrance, alert but unobtrusive, watching without seeming to stare. When a customer selects her for the evening, a cattle broker from San Antonio, a regular who visits whenever, business brings him to Dustwater, Emma ascends the stairs with her customary grace. But as she passes the landing, she glances back and finds Hayes watching her, his expression unreadable. For the first time in years, she feels something close to shame as she leads a man to her bedroom. Later, after the broker has gone and the silver dove has fallen into the quiet of late night, Emma sits at the window of Lucy's room, unable to sleep. The town outside is dark, save for a few lamplight glows, where others like her find rest elusive. She thinks of Hayes, probably asleep in her bed now, and wonders again what brought him to Dustwater. A Texas Ranger, even a former one, doesn't end up working security at a brothel without reason. Such men have skills that would be valued anywhere: law enforcement, private security for wealthy ranchers, even guns for hire for those with fewer scruples. Why choose this place, this life, unless he's looking for something or someone? The thought sends a chill through her. Over the years, girls have come and gone from the Silver Dove, some by choice, moving on to other establishments or other lives. Others, Emma doesn't like to think about the others, the ones who disappeared without explanation, whose belongings were removed in the night, whose names became forbidden to mention. Mrs. Caldwell has secrets darker than most suspect. Emma is certain of it. Could Hayes be investigating her? The thought is both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. Emma presses her forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching as a single rider passes through the darkened street below. The moon casts enough light to reveal the broad shoulders and straight posture of Thomas Hayes as he guides his horse out of town. Not sleeping after all then, and certainly not staying put as Mrs. Caldwell had arranged. Emma watches until he disappears from view, wondering what business takes a man out riding in the dead of night. Whatever it is, she tells herself firmly, it's none of her concern. She survived this long by minding her own business, by becoming exactly what is expected of her, and nothing more. Curiosity about Thomas Hayes can only lead to trouble. But as she finally returns to bed, slipping carefully in beside the sleeping, Lucy, Emma knows it's already too late. For the first time in years, she's curious about something beyond the walls of the Silver Dove. And curiosity, like hope, is a dangerous thing in a place built on secrets and lies. The morning sun filters through the faded curtains, casting mottled patterns across the floorboards as Emma helps Lucy lace her corset. The younger woman chatters excitedly about a customer who promised to take her to San Antonio someday, her voice bright with hope that makes Emma's chest tighten. She's heard such promises before. They dissolve like sugar in rain, leaving nothing but the bitter taste of disappointment. But she doesn't say this to Lucy. Let her believe for now. Reality will teach its own lessons soon enough. He says his brother owns a dress shop there, Lucy continues, inhaling sharply as Emma pulls. The lace is tighter. Can you imagine? All those beautiful gowns right at your fingertips. Sounds lovely, Emma replies, tying off the corset with practiced efficiency. But remember what Mrs. Caldwell says. Promises made in the dark don't survive the light of morning. Lucy finishes with a sigh. I know, but William seems different. They all seem different, Emma thinks, but doesn't say. Instead, she gives Lucy's shoulder a gentle squeeze before moving to the cracked mirror to arrange her own hair. 10 years at the Silver Dove have taught her to prepare quickly, to transform from the woman who wakes up hollow-eyed and silent into the carefully crafted illusion that men pay for. Did you see him leave last night? Lucy asks, changing the subject as she pins up her red curls. Emma's hands pause momentarily. Who? Hayes, of course. Miller says he goes out riding most nights after his shift. Lucy's eyes meet Emma's in the mirror, curious and bright. No one knows where he goes. Emma resumes her work, fingers weaving her chestnut hair into a simple style that can be elaborated upon later. It's none of our business what he does. Mrs. Caldwell seems to think it is. I heard her telling Miller to find out where he disappears to. This catches Emma's attention, though she's careful not to show it. Mrs. Caldwell should worry more about her missing inventory and less about her employees' whereabouts. Lucy's eyes widen. Missing inventory? What do you mean? Emma instantly regrets mentioning it. Nothing, just some bottles gone from the storeroom, according to Rosalinda. She stands, smoothing her simple morning dress. Come on, we should get breakfast before Mrs. Caldwell assigns the daily chores. As they make their way downstairs, Emma notices an unusual tension in the air. The Silver Dove is always quieter during daylight hours, but today there's something different. Hushed conversations that stop when they approach, sidelong glances from the cleaning girls. Even Rosalinda seems distracted as she serves them their morning meal. Something's happened, Lucy whispers, picking up on the atmosphere as well. Before Emma can respond, the front door swings open and Sheriff Dawson steps into the saloon. He's a squat man with a perpetually sunburned face and small, shrewd eyes. That miss nothing. Unlike many lawmen who look the other way when it comes to establishments like the Silver Dove, Dawson takes a more pragmatic approach. Regular payments from Mrs. Caldwell ensure he's available when needed, but absent when convenient. His presence now, in the morning hours, is unusual. Mrs. Caldwell emerges from her office, her face composed, though Emma detects a tightness around her mouth. Sheriff Dawson, to what do we owe this pleasure? Dawson removes his hat, revealing a ring of sweat along his receding hairline. Official business, Mrs. Caldwell. Need to ask some questions about a situation that's come up. Of course. Mrs. Caldwell gestures toward her office. Would you like to speak privately? Actually, Dawson says, his gaze sweeping the room until it lands on Emma and Lucy. I need to speak with all your girls. Got some questions about a man who might have come through here. Emma feels a cold prickle of unease slide down her spine. Beside her, Lucy shifts nervously, her breakfast forgotten. My girls are preparing for the day, Sheriff, Mrs. Caldwell says, her tone still pleasant, but with a harder edge now. Surely this can wait until... It can't. Dawson cuts her off, something he rarely dares to do. This is a matter of some urgency? Mrs. Caldwell's smile thins dangerously. Very well. Emma, gather the others in the parlor, please. As Emma rises to obey, the back door opens, and Thomas Hayes steps in, his tall frame filling the doorway. His gaze takes in the scene, the sheriff, Mrs. Caldwell's tense posture, the unnatural quiet of the normally bustling establishment. Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Caldwell says, a note of warning in her voice. The sheriff is here on official business that does not concern security matters. Perhaps you could check the premises outside while we attend to this. Hayes doesn't move. Security is my job, ma'am. If there's trouble, I should know about it. Sheriff Dawson squints at him. Don't believe we've met, mister. Thomas Hayes, new security for the Silver Dove. Something passes between the two men, a flash of recognition or wariness, Emma can't tell which. But Dawson's posture changes, subtly, becoming more guarded. Texas Ranger Hayes, he asks, the question loaded with meaning Emma doesn't understand. A former, Hayes replies, his voice neutral. Dawson nods slowly. Interesting place for a man with your background to end up. I go where the work is, Sheriff. The tension in the room stretches taut as a bowstring. Emma finds herself holding her breath, sensing currents of meaning flowing beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary exchange. Well, Dawson finally says, breaking the silence. You might as well stay. This concerns security, in a manner of speaking. Mrs. Caldwell's expression darkens, but she says nothing as Emma goes to gather the other girls. Within minutes, the parlor is filled with the women of the Silver Dove, 7 in total, ranging from Lucy's youthful 19 to May's weathered 35. They perch nervously on chairs and settees, exchanging questioning glances. Emma remains, standing, positioning herself near the doorway where Hayes leans against the frame, arms crossed over his chest. Sheriff Dawson surveys the assembled women, then pulls a folded paper from his vest pocket. "I'm looking for information about this man," he says, unfolding what appears to be a crude wanted poster. "Name's Edwin Blackwood. Goes by Gentleman Ed in some circles. Anyone seen him around these parts?" He holds up the poster, revealing a sketch of a handsome man with a neatly trimmed beard and cold eyes. Emma studies it carefully but doesn't recognize the face. Around the room, the other women shake their heads or murmur denials. "What's he wanted for?" Hayes asks from his position by the door. Dawson hesitates, glancing at the women. Various matters, fraud mostly, but more recently connections to a white slavery ring operating out of New Mexico territory. A chill sweeps through the room. White slavery, the trafficking of women and girls, is a whispered horror, something that happens to others in places far away. Not here, not in Dustwater. "Why do you think he'd come here?" Mrs. Caldwell asks, her voice carefully controlled. "Reports place him in the area, and these operations, they need..." Dawson pauses, uncomfortable. "They need inventory." Inventory. The word lands with sickening clarity. Not whiskey or cigars or fancy dresses. Women, girls, human beings to be bought and sold. "None of my girls has seen this man," Mrs. Caldwell says firmly. "I would know if a stranger had been showing unusual interest in my establishment." Emma watches Hayes during this exchange. His expression reveals nothing, but there's a tension in his shoulders, a stillness that suggests he's taking in every word, every reaction. His eyes meet hers briefly, and something passes between them. A question, perhaps, or a warning. "Well," Dawson says, refolding the poster, "if anyone does see him or hears anything that might point to his whereabouts, I expect to be notified immediately." He looks directly at Mrs. Caldwell. "Immediately. Understand? This isn't something we want in Dustwater." "Of course, Sheriff," Mrs. Caldwell agrees smoothly. "We want only the best for our little community." After Dawson leaves, the parlor erupts in nervous chatter. White slavery, trafficking. These words flutter around the room like trapped birds, beating against the walls of their understanding. For most of the women, their current situation, while far from ideal, has boundaries they understand, rules they've learned to navigate. The thought of being taken away, sold to unknown men in unknown places, fills them with fresh terror. "Enough!" Mrs. Caldwell's sharp command cuts through the noise. "This is not our concern. Sheriff Dawson is merely being cautious. No one is coming to take any of you anywhere." Her words are meant to reassure, but Emma hears the calculation beneath them. Mrs. Caldwell cares about her girls only as assets, investments to be protected. If something or someone threatened her business, how far would she go to preserve it? "Back to your duties," Mrs. Caldwell continues. "We open in 6 hours, and there's plenty to be done before then." As the women disperse, Emma finds herself lingering in the parlor, watching as Mrs. Caldwell approaches Hayes. "A word, Mr. Hayes," she says, gesturing toward her office. Emma busies herself straightening cushions, moving slowly enough to overhear the beginning of their conversation. "I find it curious," Mrs. Caldwell says, her voice low but clear, "that a former Texas Ranger appears in my establishment just days before the sheriff comes asking questions about human trafficking. Hayes' response is too quiet for Emma to catch, but Mrs. Caldwell's sharp laugh carries easily. Coincidences make me nervous, Mr. Hayes, especially when they involve law enforcement, former or otherwise. They move into the office, the door closing firmly behind them. Emma stares at the wooden barrier, mind racing. Could Hayes be investigating the very situation Dawson described? Is that why he rides out at night, tracking this Blackwood character? And if so, why work at the Silver Dove rather than with the sheriff, unless he doesn't trust Dawson? Or perhaps he suspects someone at the Silver Dove is involved. The thought chills her. She's always known Mrs. Caldwell capable of cruelty, of exploitation, but this would be something darker. And yet there have been girls who disappeared over the years. Young ones, pretty ones, often those who caused trouble or knew too much. Emma had always assumed they'd run away or been dismissed, sent to other establishments in other towns. But what if there was another explanation? What if Mrs. Caldwell wasn't just a madam, but something worse, a supplier? She's so lost in these disturbing thoughts that she doesn't notice Hayes exit the office until he speaks directly behind her. "Miss Wilson," Emma starts, nearly dropping the pillow she's been mindlessly plumping for several minutes. "Mr. Hayes, I didn't see you there." Evidently. There's a trace of dry humor in his voice, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Mrs. Caldwell mentioned you know the town well." "I suppose," she replies cautiously, "though I don't get out much these days." "But you've been here 10 years. You'd know if strangers came through regularly, if there were patterns to their visits." It's not really a question, but Emma answers anyway. "Dustwater sees all kinds. Pass through. Cattle buyers, drummers, drifters, most don't stay long. And the ones who do, the regulars who aren't local?" Emma studies him, trying to understand where this is leading. "There are a few. Businessmen with interests in the area, cattle brokers during the season. Anyone takes special interest in the younger girls, Lucy, Sadie?" The question confirms her suspicions. Hayes isn't just security. He's investigating something connected to Dawson's visit. But can she trust him? In 10 years, Emma has learned that trust is a luxury she can't afford. "Why are you asking me this?" she counters. Hayes glances toward Mrs. Caldwell's closed door, then back to Emma. His voice drops lower. "Because I think you see more than most, Miss Wilson, and I think you care what happens to the others, even if you pretend not to." The assessment strikes uncomfortably close to home. Emma has cultivated an image of detached indifference over the years. It's safer that way. Caring makes you vulnerable, and vulnerability is dangerous in a place like the Silver Dove. "You don't know anything about me," she says, her voice cooler now. "I know you weren't born to this life," he replies steadily. "I know someone else made that choice for you, and I know part of you is still fighting against it, even after all these years." Emma takes an involuntary step back, unnerved by his perception. "You're mistaken, Mr. Hayes. I made my peace with this life long ago." "Did you?" His grey eyes hold hers, searching for something she's not sure she still possesses. "Then why do you watch the trains come and go? Why do you stand at that window upstairs, looking out at a town you claim holds nothing for you?" Heat flushes her cheeks. Anger, embarrassment, something else she can't name. "You've been watching me. I notice things. It's what kept me alive as a ranger." Before she can respond, Lucy appears in the doorway, her expression bright with excitement that dims slightly at finding Emma and Hayes in what appears to be an intense conversation. "Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt," she says, eyes darting between them curiously. "You're not interrupting anything," Emma assures her, relieved for the distraction. "What is it?" "Mrs. Caldwell wants us to prepare for a private gathering tonight. Some special guests are coming." Lucy's voice drops to a whisper. "She says they're very important men from out of town, and we're to look our absolute best." Hayes straightens, suddenly alert. Did she mention names, where they're from? Lucy shakes her head. Only that there's 4 of them, arriving on the evening train, and that they've requested privacy. The main saloon will be closed to regular customers tonight. Emma feels a prickle of unease. In 10 years, she can count on one hand the number of times Mrs. Caldwell has closed the Silver Dove for private gatherings. Such events are always extremely profitable and sometimes dangerous for the women involved. Thank you, Lucy, Hayes says, his tone dismissing her, even as his expression remains polite. Would you mind giving Miss Wilson and me another moment? Lucy glances at Emma, clearly burning with curiosity but too well trained to question directly. Of course, I'll be upstairs when you're ready, Emma. When she's gone, Hayes turns back to Emma, urgency evident in his manner. This gathering, it's not a coincidence. Not after Dawson's visit today. You think it's connected to this Blackwood person, the trafficking? Hayes nods grimly. 4 men arriving by train, requesting privacy. It fits the pattern. They'll be looking to make acquisitions. The clinical term makes Emma's stomach turn. Acquisitions, she repeats flatly. You mean they're shopping for women? Yes, and Mrs. Caldwell is preparing the merchandise. Emma wants to deny it, to defend the woman who has, in her own cold way, provided a kind of stability for the past 10 years. But she can't. Because deep down, she's always known what Mrs. Caldwell is capable of. Why are you telling me this? She asks. Why not go to Sheriff Dawson if you're so sure? Hayes's expression darkens. Because I'm not convinced Dawson isn't involved. His visit today might have been a warning to Mrs. Caldwell, a heads up that attention is being paid to Blackwood's operation, or it might have been a show establishing plausible deniability if things go wrong. That's a serious accusation. I've seen corruption before, Miss Wilson. Seen how it works, how it protects itself. Hayes runs a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of frustration. I need to know who's arriving on that train tonight. Emma makes a decision then, though she's not entirely sure why. Perhaps it's the memory of girls who disappeared in the night. Perhaps it's the thought of Lucy, naive and hopeful, being sold to men who would extinguish that light forever. Or perhaps it's simply that, for the first time in years, someone is offering her a chance to do something more than survive. I can help, she says quietly. Mrs. Caldwell will expect me to greet them, to help with the arrangements. I can get names, details. Hayes studies her, surprise and something like respect in his gaze. It could be dangerous. My entire life is dangerous, Mr. Hayes. Emma gives him a smile that holds no humor. At least this would be dangerous for a purpose. He nods slowly. All right, but we need a way to communicate. I won't be allowed in during the private gathering. The kitchen entrance, Emma suggests. After midnight, when things are underway, I can claim to need air. Step out briefly. Good. I'll be waiting. Hayes hesitates, then adds, Thank you, Miss Wilson. The simple courtesy, offered without expectation or demand, catches her off guard. It's been so long since anyone thanked her for anything beyond services rendered. Don't thank me yet, she replies. I haven't done anything. You've chosen a side, he says quietly. That's not nothing. As he walks away, Emma wonders if he's right. Has she chosen a side? After years of careful neutrality, of protecting herself at all costs, the thought is both terrifying and exhilarating. The rest of the day passes in a blur of preparation. Mrs. Caldwell is unusually hands-on, inspecting every detail of the arrangements. The best glasses are brought out, the most expensive whiskey placed on display. The women are instructed to wear their finest gowns, to style their hair in the latest fashions from Eastern magazines. These are cultured gentlemen, Mrs. Caldwell tells them as they gather in the parlor. They expect refinement, intelligence, no crude language, no obvious solicitation. Let them approach you, not the other way around. Her gaze lingers on Lucy and Sadie, the youngest of the group. "You two will attend solely to our guests. No other customers, no distractions." Emma watches Lucy's face light up at what she perceives as a compliment, an opportunity. She doesn't understand that being singled out this way is not a reward, but a risk. Emma wants to warn her, but there's no opportunity. Mrs. Caldwell keeps them busy with preparations until the very last minute. As evening approaches, Emma dresses with particular care. Her gown, a deep blue silk that brings out the gold in her hazel eyes, is one she reserves for special clients. She arranges her hair in a simple but elegant style, adding a silver comb that catches the light when she moves. The overall effect is one of quiet sophistication, noticeable without being flashy, elegant without being unapproachable. "You look beautiful," Lucy says when they meet in the hallway. The younger woman is resplendent in emerald green, her red hair arranged in elaborate curls that frame her face. "I'm so nervous. Mrs. Caldwell says these men are very important." "Just remember," Emma cautions, "importance doesn't equal kindness. Be careful what you say, what you agree to." Lucy rolls her eyes. "You worry too much, Emma. This is our chance to meet real gentlemen, not just dusty cowboys and traveling salesmen." Before Emma can respond, Mrs. Caldwell appears at the end of the hall. "They're here," she announces. "Places, everyone. And remember, these men can change your fortunes if you please them." As they descend the stairs, Emma catches sight of Hayes standing near the entrance. He's been instructed to admit only the special guests and then remain outside, ensuring privacy. Their eyes meet briefly, and she gives him an almost imperceptible nod. He returns it, his expression grave. The men waiting in the parlor are not what Emma expected. Based on Hayes' concerns, she had imagined rough characters thinly disguised as gentlemen. Instead, she finds four well-dressed, articulate men who could easily pass for successful businessmen in any city. The leader introduces himself as Mr. Edwards, a cattle investor from Chicago. He's tall and lean, with silver threading through his dark hair and beard, giving him a distinguished appearance. His companions, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Thompson, are similarly polished, though Emma notes that Thompson seems younger, less comfortable in his role. "Gentlemen," Mrs. Caldwell purrs, "welcome to the Silver Dove. Allow me to introduce my girls." The introductions proceed with the formality of a society gathering rather than a brothel event. Each woman curtsies, each man bows slightly in acknowledgement. When it's Emma's turn, she feels Edward's gaze linger on her face longer than necessary, assessing in a way that sends a chill down her spine despite her years of experience with male attention. "Miss Wilson," he says, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture more common in Eastern parlors than Western saloons. "A pleasure." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Edwards," she replies, the practiced lie falling easily from her lips. As the evening progresses, Emma circulates among the men, listening more than speaking. They discuss business ventures, the changing landscape of the West, the opportunities presented by the expanding railroad. Nothing overtly suspicious, nothing that confirms Hayes's fears. And yet, there's something in their manner, the way their conversations pause when she or the other. Women approach, the sidelong glances they exchange when Mrs. Caldwell mentions her special arrangements for later in the evening. Edwards, in particular, watches Lucy and Sadie with an intensity that makes Emma's skin crawl, not with the obvious lust of typical customers, but with something more calculating, like a man assessing horseflesh at auction. Shortly before midnight, Mrs. Caldwell announces that refreshments will be served in the private dining room, and that the gentlemen may select companions to join them. As expected, Edwards chooses Lucy, his hand possessive on her waist, as he guides her toward the back of the establishment. Sullivan selects Sadie, while Parker invites Emma with a formal politeness that makes her heart race with anxiety. Thompson, the youngest, seems content with May, whose experience is evident in the way she immediately puts him at ease. The private dining room is the finest space in the Silver Dove, a testament to Mrs. Caldwell's occasional ambitions beyond running a simple brothel. Crystal glasses glint in the lamplight, fine china adorns the table, and a bottle of genuine French champagne sits chilling in a silver bucket. As they take their seats, Emma maneuvers to position herself near Lucy, who seems slightly overwhelmed by the attention from Edwards. The girl sips her champagne too quickly, her cheeks already flushed, her laughter a touch too bright. "You must tire of Dustwater," Parker says to Emma, his voice cultured, his manner impeccable. "A woman of your refinement belongs in a more civilized setting." "Dustwater has its charms," Emma replies carefully. "One grows accustomed to its ways." Accustomed, perhaps, but surely not content. Parker's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Have you never thought of leaving, seeking opportunities elsewhere?" The question is loaded, seeming innocent, yet carrying undercurrents of meaning. Emma senses she's being tested, assessed. "One needs resources to seek opportunities, Mr. Parker," she says, matching his tone of casual philosophy. "And direction. Both can be provided to the right woman." His gaze is steady, evaluating. "We represent interests that are always seeking quality additions to our establishments in California. More refined clientele, better compensation. California." The word strikes Emma like a physical blow. She's heard whispers over the years. Women promised positions in elegant houses in San Francisco or Los Angeles, only to disappear completely, not just from Dustwater, but from any record or mention. "That sounds intriguing," she says, fighting to keep her voice steady. "What sort of establishments?" Parker smiles, pleased by her apparent interest. "Private clubs, mostly, catering to gentlemen of means and discernment. The work is similar, but the rewards significantly greater." Across the table, Edwards is having a similar conversation with Lucy, whose eyes grow wider with each description of the life that awaits her in California. Emma wants to scream at her, to drag her away from these men who view them not as women, but as commodities to be transported and sold. Instead, she sips her champagne and nods at appropriate intervals as Parker outlines the opportunity he's offering. Transportation would be provided, he explains. A contract would be signed, ensuring fair treatment and compensation, all very proper, very businesslike. Nothing like the brutal reality Hayes had described. And yet, beneath the veneer of respectability, Emma senses the truth. These men aren't offering opportunity, they're negotiating a purchase. The clock strikes midnight, its chimes barely audible from the main saloon. Emma places her napkin on the table and rises gracefully. "If you'll excuse me, gentlemen," she says with a practiced smile, "I find I need a moment of fresh air." Mrs. Caldwell frowns, but Parker waves a permissive hand. "Of course, my dear. Don't be long. We have much more to discuss." Emma moves through the darkened saloon, past the empty bar, where earlier Hayes had stood watch. The kitchen is deserted, Rosalinda having been dismissed hours ago in preparation for this private gathering. Emma slips through the back door into the night air, cool against her flushed skin. Hayes materializes from the shadows almost immediately, his expression tense. "What have you learned?" "They're calling themselves cattle investors from Chicago," Emma whispers, glancing back toward the door. "Edwards is the leader. They're offering positions in private clubs in California, talking about contracts, transportation, compensation." Hayes nods grimly. "It's them. The same approach was used in Dallas, in Abilene. They charm the women with promises of better conditions, higher pay. By the time the women realize the truth, they're already hundreds of miles away, with no money, no connections, no way to escape. Lucy and Sadie are their primary targets." Emma continues, Edwards has barely taken his eyes off Lucy all evening, and Mrs. Caldwell. She knows exactly what they're doing. She introduced them as special guests, made sure Lucy and Sadie were singled out for their attention. Hayes's jaw tightens. I suspected as much. This isn't the first time she's done business with them. The confirmation of her worst fears makes Emma's stomach twist. What now? We can't let them take Lucy and Sadie. We won't, Hayes assures her, his voice low and certain. But we need more, concrete evidence of the trafficking operation, not just suspicions. If these men are who I think they are, they're connected to Edwin Blackwood's operation, and I've been tracking Blackwood for months. Months? Emma's brow furrows. Then you didn't just happen to find work at the Silver Dove. Hayes hesitates, then admits, no, I came to Dustwater specifically because I had information that Blackwood's operation used this route, this town. The Silver Dove was the logical place to start looking. And you didn't tell me this because I wasn't sure who was involved. I still don't know how deep it goes, whether Dawson is corrupt, whether there are others in town working with them. Emma absorbs this, understanding his caution even as she feels a flicker of hurt at his deception. So what do we do now? I need you to get something concrete, names of other towns they operate in, details about their transportation arrangements, anything that proves this is an organized operation and not just individual recruitments. And then? Then I'll move against them. I may be a former ranger, but I still have connections. People who trust me more than the local law. Emma nods, her mind racing. They're planning to stay the night. Mrs. Caldwell has prepared rooms for them upstairs, the best ones, at the end of the hall. Can you get into those rooms? Check their belongings while they're occupied. The suggestion should shock her. Searching through a guest's possessions is a serious breach of the Silver Dove's unwritten rules. But given what's at stake, Emma doesn't hesitate. Yes, I can do that. Most of them will be with one of the girls by 2 o'clock. That would be my chance. Be careful, Hayes warns. These men are dangerous, Emma. If they catch you, they won't, she promises, though she can't be certain. I've been invisible in this place for years when I wanted to be. Tonight won't be any different. Hayes reaches out suddenly, his hand closing around her wrist. The touch is light but insistent, forcing her to meet his gaze. If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a moment, you get out. Understand? No matter what information you've found or haven't found, the concern in his voice catches her off guard. It's been so long since anyone worried about her safety, about her as a person rather than an asset. I understand, she says softly. His hand lingers on her wrist a moment longer, warm against her skin, before he releases her. I'll be watching. The back entrance all night. 3 short knocks if you need me. Emma nods, then turns to go back inside. At the door, she pauses. Mr. Hayes. Yes? Why do you care so much? About stopping these men, about girls you don't even know? Hayes is silent for a long moment, his face half in shadow. Because someone has to, he finally says. And because I've seen what happens to the women they take, no one deserves that fate. There's more to it. Emma is certain. Something personal. Perhaps something that drives him beyond simple justice. But now isn't the time to press for answers. The men inside are waiting, and she has a role to play if they're going to save Lucy and Sadie from a fate worse than the one they already know. I'll find what you need, she promises, and slips back into the Silver Dove, the door closing softly. Behind her, Emma slips back into the private dining room, arranging her features into the practiced mask of serenity that has served her so well over the years. The men barely notice her return, engrossed as they are in their own conversations. Lucy catches her eye across the table, her smile too bright, her movements becoming looser as the champagne takes effect. Edwards leans close to her, whispering something that makes the young woman laugh. a high, brittle sound that sets Emma's teeth on edge. "You seem troubled, Miss Wilson," Parker observes, his keen eyes missing nothing. "Did the night air not refresh you as expected?" "On the contrary," Emma replies smoothly, settling back into her chair. "I find clarity often comes in moments of solitude." Parker smiles, the expression not reaching his eyes. "Clarity can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes ignorance provides greater comfort, perhaps, but I've never been one to choose comfort over truth." The words emerge unbidden, more honest than she intended. Parker studies her with renewed interest, as if reassessing her value in light of this revelation. "A rare quality," he murmurs, "one that suggests you might be particularly well-suited for the opportunities we discussed earlier." Emma inclines, her head in acknowledgement, though inwardly she recoils at the thought. "I'd be interested to hear more specific details about these establishments in California, the nature of the clientele, the expectations of the women who work there. Of course, our venues cater to men of considerable means and influence, politicians, industrialists, foreign dignitaries. The expectations are commensurate with the compensation offered." Parker swirls his champagne thoughtfully. "The women who succeed in our establishments possess certain qualities beyond the obvious physical attributes. Intelligence, discretion, adaptability. And those who don't succeed?" Emma asks, keeping her tone curious rather than challenging. Parker's smile thins slightly. "We're very selective in our recruitment, Miss Wilson. We rarely make mistakes in our assessments." The veiled threat isn't lost on Emma. These men have no intention of allowing failure or escape once a woman enters their operation. She glances at Lucy again, now leaning against Edward's shoulder, her eyes glazed with alcohol and false. "Promises. Mrs. Caldwell speaks highly of your discretion," Edwards comments, his attention shifting to Emma. "She says you've been with the Silver Dove for quite some time." 10 years, Emma confirms, wondering how much Mrs. Caldwell has told them about her, about all of the women. "A testament to your adaptability," Edwards says, echoing Parker's earlier assessment. "Most women in your position move frequently, chasing illusory improvements in their circumstances." "I've found stability has its advantages," Emma replies. Carefully, Edwards nods, his expression calculating. "Indeed, though I wonder if after so long you might be ready for a change, something more challenging." Behind his words, Emma hears the real question. Are you worth acquiring, or have you become too settled, too independent to be properly controlled? Her survival instincts sharpen, recognizing the dangerous game she's playing. These men are evaluating her just as they are Lucy and Sadie, but with different criteria. To them, experience can be an asset or a liability, depending on what they intend. "I believe in considering all opportunities," she says, meeting Edward's gaze with calculated boldness, "especially those that offer genuine advancement." Something like satisfaction flickers in his eyes. He believes he's finding a willing recruit rather than a potential informant. The misconception will serve her purposes. "We should discuss specifics," he says, gesturing to Parker. "After our current entertainment concludes." Mrs. Caldwell chooses this moment to rise from her seat at the head of the table. "Gentlemen, perhaps you'd like to continue your individual conversations in more comfortable surroundings. The hour grows late, and I'm sure you're tired from your journey." The suggestion is met with murmurs of approval. Emma watches as Edwards helps Lucy to her feet, his hand resting possessively at the small of her back. The girl sways slightly, steadied by his firm grip. "Miss Wilson," Parker says, extending his hand to her, "would you do me the honor of your company for the remainder of the evening?" Emma takes his hand, her smile practiced and empty. "The honor is mine, Mr. Parker." As they leave the dining room, Emma catches sight of Mrs. Caldwell's satisfied expression. The madam believes she's orchestrated a profitable evening, one that will lead to lucrative arrangements for the Silver Dove and perhaps commissions on future placements. She has no idea that Emma now stands between her and those plans. The next 2 hours pass in a familiar haze of professional intimacy. Emma plays her role perfectly, attentive and responsive, without ever being truly present. Parker is neither cruel nor particularly demanding, simply a man accustomed to purchasing what he desires, including the illusion of mutual pleasure. When he finally drifts to sleep, his breathing deep and regular, Emma waits an additional 20 minutes before carefully extricating herself from his embrace. She dresses silently in the darkened room, her movements practiced from years of similar exits. The pocket watch on the bedside table shows 2:15, the perfect time for her mission. Most of the establishment will be asleep or otherwise engaged, including Mrs. Caldwell, who retires promptly at 1 unless special circumstances demand her attention. Emma slips into the hallway, her stocking feet making no sound on the wooden floors. She knows every creaking board, every loose floorboard to avoid. The Silver Dove sleeps around her, the usual sounds of revelry replaced by occasional muffled voices or the distant creak of bed springs. The guest rooms occupied by Edwards and his companions are at the far end of the hall, the finest accommodations the Silver Dove has to offer, with actual doors rather than the curtains that separate most of the women's sleeping quarters. Emma pauses at Edward's door, listening intently. Silence. She presses her ear against the wood, hearing nothing but the soft, regular breathing of sleep. Lucy should be inside with him, but Emma can't afford to check on her now. The priority must be finding evidence of the trafficking operation. Emma continues past Edward's room to the smaller chamber at the end of the hall, the one assigned to Thompson, the youngest and seemingly most junior member of the group. The door is unlocked, the room empty. Thompson is likely still with May, which gives Emma the opportunity she needs. She slips inside, closing the door silently behind her. The room is dim, lit only by moonlight filtering through the thin curtains. She can make out the shape of a valise on the wooden stand near the window, a coat draped over the chair beside it. Emma moves to the valise first, her fingers working the brass clasps with practiced precision. Inside, she finds neatly folded clothing, a shaving kit, and a leather-bound notebook tucked beneath a clean shirt. Emma extracts the notebook and takes it to the window, where the moonlight provides just enough illumination to read by. The first few pages contain what appear to be financial notations, figures, dates, initials that mean nothing to her. But as she continues, the entries become more specific. Names of women, ages, physical descriptions, each paired with a sum of money and the letter grade like a schoolchild's report card. Following these entries are destinations: San Francisco, Los Angeles, even places as far as Seattle and Denver. Emma's stomach turns as she realizes what she's seeing, a ledger of human transactions, of women reduced to inventory. She scans the pages, looking for names she recognizes, dreading what she might find. On the third to last page, a recent entry catches her eye. Dustwater Potential Acquisitions, LS, 19 Auburn Green Eyes. Grade A, offer $200. SM, 18 Blonde, Blue Eyes. Grade A, offer $175. Possible additional EW, 26 Brunette, Experienced. Evaluation pending. Lucy, Sadie, and herself. Emma stares at the notation, her hands trembling slightly. The clinical assessment of their value, the reduction of their humanity to grades and dollar amounts, fills her with a cold rage she hasn't allowed herself to feel in years. She needs to copy this information, but she has nothing to write with or on. Instead, she memorizes the key details, names of other towns where they've recruited, dates of transactions, the names of establishments in California where women were sent. Hayes will need all of this to build his case. Just as she's about to close the notebook, she hears footsteps in the hallway. Heavy male footsteps approaching the room. Emma quickly returns the notebook to its place in the valise, adjusting the shirt above it exactly as she found it. There's no time to escape through the door. She looks around, frantically, then drops to the floor and rolls under the bed, pressing herself against the wall just as the door handle turns. Thompson enters, stumbling slightly, the floorboards creaking under his weight. Emma holds her breath, watching his boots move across the room to the washstand. Water splashes as he rinses his face, followed by the sounds of him undressing. She prays he won't look under the bed, a hiding place so obvious that its very simplicity might protect her. The bed sags above her as Thompson sits on its edge, then lies down, the frame creaking ominously close to her head. For what feels like an eternity, Emma remains motionless, barely breathing, as Thompson shifts and eventually settles into sleep, his breathing becoming deep and regular. Only when she's certain he's unconscious does Emma begin the painstaking process of extracting herself from beneath the bed. Inch by silent inch, she edges toward freedom, freezing whenever Thompson stirs. Finally, she's clear of the bed frame, rising to a crouch beside it. The door seems miles away, each step a potential disaster of creaking boards or accidentally disturbed furniture. Emma moves with the patience of prey evading a predator, placing each foot with deliberate care, distributing her weight to avoid the boards she knows will betray her. After what seems like hours but can only be minutes, her hand closes around the doorknob. She turns it slowly, easing the door open just enough to slip through, then closes it with equal caution. In the hallway, Emma presses her back against the wall, heart pounding, allowing herself a moment of relief. She's found what Hayes needs, concrete evidence of the trafficking operation. Now, she just needs to get to him. But as she turns toward the stairs, a door opens further down the hall. Emma freezes, then quickly adopts a casual pose, as if she's simply returning to her own room. Edwards emerges, adjusting his suspenders, his expression satisfied in a way that makes Emma's skin crawl. He pauses when he sees her, surprise registering briefly before being replaced by calculation. "Miss Wilson," he says, his voice low. "A late night wandering?" Emma forces a smile, mind racing for a plausible explanation. "Mr. Parker was thirsty. I was fetching water." Edward's gaze travels down to her empty hands. "Without a pitcher." "The kitchen was locked," she improvises. "I was about to try Mrs. Caldwell's private supply." He studies her, clearly skeptical. "A dedicated hostess. No wonder Mrs. Caldwell values you so highly." There's something in his tone that sends a chill down Emma's spine, a subtle menace beneath the surface courtesy. He knows she's lying. The question is whether he suspects why. "If you'll excuse me," Emma says, moving to pass him, "I should return to Mr. Parker before he wakes." Edwards steps into her path, not touching her but effectively blocking her retreat. "I was just checking on Miss Lucy. She seemed somewhat overwhelmed by the evening's festivities." "Lucy is young," Emma replies carefully. "Sometimes her enthusiasm exceeds her capacity." "Youth has its advantages," Edwards agrees, his eyes never leaving hers. "Malleability chief among them. But experience has its own appeal, wouldn't you say, Miss Wilson?" The conversation has taken a dangerous turn. Emma senses that Edwards is no longer simply making conversation. He's assessing her, perhaps even testing her for some purpose of his own. "Experience teaches caution, Mr. Edwards, in all matters." "Indeed." He smiles, a gesture that doesn't reach his eyes. "Speaking of caution, I noticed our mutual friend Mr. Hayes seems to have taken a particular interest in your welfare, an unusual level of concern for mere security. Wouldn't you agree?" Emma's blood runs cold. Edwards has noticed the connection between her and Hayes, a connection she herself has only just begun to acknowledge. The implications are dangerous for both of them. Mr. Hayes takes his responsibilities seriously, she says, struggling to keep her voice even. Mrs. Caldwell insists upon it. Edward steps closer, close enough that Emma can smell the whiskey on his breath. Tell me, Miss Wilson, what do you know about Thomas Hayes? About his past, his affiliations? Nothing beyond his current employment, Emma lies, holding her ground despite her instinct to retreat. Why do you ask? Edward studies her face, looking for signs of deception. Merely curious. Men in our line of work develop a certain instinct about irregularities. Mr. Hayes strikes me as irregular. We're all entitled to our opinions, Emma says neutrally. Indeed we are. Edward steps back slightly, his posture relaxing though. His eyes remain sharp. Well, don't let me keep you from your duties, Miss Wilson. I'm sure Mr. Parker will be wondering where you've gone. He gestures for her to pass, a mockery of gentlemanly courtesy. Emma inclines her head slightly and walks past him, feeling his gaze boring into her back as she returns to Parker's room. Once inside, she leans against the closed door, heart pounding. Edward suspects something about her, about Hayes, about their intentions, which means time is running out. She needs to get to Hayes immediately to warn him and share what she's learned. Parker stirs in the bed, mumbling something incoherent before settling back into sleep. Emma waits, counting his breaths until they become deep and regular again. Then she moves silently to the window, drawing back the thin curtain to peer into the darkness below. The rear of the Silver Dove faces an alleyway, dimly lit by a single lamp at its far end. Emma can just make out a figure standing in the shadows. Hayes, keeping his vigil as promised. She needs to reach him, but Edwards is likely still in the hallway, perhaps watching for exactly such an attempt. Emma considers her options. She could wait until Parker wakes, make some excuse to leave, and try to find Hayes later. But by then, Edwards might have alerted his companions to his suspicions. They might even decide to leave town immediately, taking Lucy and Sadie with them. No, she needs to act now. Emma opens the window carefully, wincing at the slight squeal of the age frame. Cool night air rushes in, carrying with it the scents of dust and distant sage. The drop to the ground is substantial, at least 15 feet, with nothing to break her fall. But she's come too far to hesitate now. Emma gathers her skirts, tying them in a knot at her knee to free her legs. Then she swings one leg over the windowsill, then the other, until she's perched precariously on the edge, facing the room. Beneath her, the ground seems impossibly far away, the darkness concealing whatever debris might lie in wait. Taking a deep breath, Emma pushes off from the window, twisting her body to face downward as she falls. The impact comes sooner than expected, hard and jarring. Pain shoots through her ankles and knees as she crumples, rolling to distribute the force as best she can. For a moment, she lies stunned, the breath knocked from her lungs, uncertain if she's broken anything. "Emma?" Hayes' voice comes from the darkness, urgent and concerned. Then he's kneeling beside her, his hands gentle as they help her sit up. "Are you hurt?" She tests her limbs cautiously. Pain, but nothing seems broken. "I'll live," she manages, her voice shaky. "Had to get to you. Couldn't risk the hallway." Hayes helps her to her feet, supporting her as she tests her weight on legs that feel suddenly unreliable. "What happened?" "I found evidence," Emma says quickly, leaning against him as they move deeper into the shadows of the alleyway. "A notebook. In Thompson's valise. Names, dates, transactions. Everything you need to prove what they're doing." Hayes' expression sharpens with focus. Details. Women recruited from at least 6 towns across Texas in the last month. Destinations in California, Oregon, even Colorado. And they've marked Lucy and Sadie for acquisition tonight or tomorrow. They're offering Mrs. Caldwell $200. For Lucy, $175 for Sadie. And were you on their list? Emma hesitates. They're considering me. Edwards called it an evaluation pending. Hayes's jaw tightens. We need to move now, before they have a chance to take any of you. There's more, Emma continues urgently. Edwards is suspicious. He confronted me in the hallway, asked about you, about our connection. He knows something isn't right. Hayes curses under his breath, running a hand through his hair. Then we've lost the element of surprise. Did you memorize enough from the notebook? Names, dates, specific locations? Emma nods. I believe so. But Hayes, what can you do? You said yourself the local law might be corrupted, and you're no longer a ranger. I may not wear the badge anymore, but I still have friends who do. Hayes looks toward the horizon, where the faintest lightning suggests dawn is not far off. There's a ranger outpost about 20 miles from here. 2 men I trust. If I ride now, I can bring them back by midday. And until then, Edwards and his men could leave at first light, taking Lucy and Sadie with them. Hayes considers this, his expression grim. We need to slow them down. Create a reason for them to stay in Dustwater until I return with help. How? They're horses, Hayes says after a moment's thought. They're stabled at the livery. If they couldn't leave immediately, you'd sabotage their transport? Emma asks, surprised by the suggestion. Hayes has struck her as a man who adheres strictly to the law, even when inconvenient. Not sabotage, he corrects. Just temporarily disable. Nothing that would harm the animals, just slow down their owners. Emma nods, understanding the distinction is important to him. Even so, that buys us hours at most. What about Lucy and Sadie? If Edward suspects something's wrong, they'll be the first he secures. Hayes's expression darkens. You're right. We need to get them away from the Silver Dove before Edwards realizes what's happening. I could convince them to come with me, Emma suggests. Tell them we're going on an errand for Mrs. Caldwell. Get them to the church or somewhere else in town. Too risky. Edwards and his men are watching all of you, and Mrs. Caldwell would immediately question such an errand. Hayes thinks for a moment. No, we need a distraction. Something significant enough to clear the Silver Dove temporarily. Emma follows his reasoning. A fire? Not an actual fire. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. But the threat of one. Hayes nods slowly. A plan forming. The smokehouse behind the saloon. If it looked like it was about to catch fire, everyone would evacuate. In the confusion, you could get Lucy and Sadie away. Where would I take them? The church, Hayes decides. Pastor Matthews is a good man. He'll provide sanctuary until I return with the Rangers. Emma considers the plan, identifying its weaknesses. Mrs. Caldwell will know something's wrong when she can't find us, and Edwards isn't a fool. He'll check the obvious places. Which is why I'll need to create more than one distraction, Hayes says grimly. Once you're safely away, I'll make sure Edwards and his men are too occupied to come looking for you. How? Hayes's expression turns resolute. Let me worry about that part. You focus on getting Lucy and Sadie to safety. Can you do that? Emma straightens, ignoring the pain in her ankles. Yes. Good. Hayes checks his pocket watch. It's just after 3. I'll create the diversion at 4. That gives me time to handle the horses first. When you hear the commotion, get Lucy and Sadie and head for the church. Stay there until I come for you, no matter what you hear or see. Understand? Emma nods, though something in his tone makes her uneasy. Hayes, what exactly are you planning to do with Edwards and his men? Nothing they don't deserve, he answers, his voice hardening. But nothing outside the law either. I need them alive to face justice for all the women they've trafficked. He's holding something back, she's sure of it, but there's no time to press him for details. I should get back before I'm missed, she says instead. Hayes nods, then hesitates. Emma, be careful. Edwards is dangerous, more than you know. If He realizes what you're doing. I've survived dangerous men before, she reminds him. Then, seeing his concern remains, she adds, but I'll be careful, I promise. Something shifts in Hayes' expression, a softening, brief but unmistakable. I'll see you at the church, he says, his voice low. 4 o'clock. Emma turns back toward the Silver Dove, considering her options for re-entry. The window is impossible, too high to climb, especially with her injured ankles. She'll have to risk the kitchen door and hope no one is awake to notice her return. Emma. Hayes' voice stops her. She turns to find him watching her, his expression intense. Whatever happens, remember, none of this is your fault. Not what happened to you 10 years ago, not what's happening now. You deserve better. All of you do. The words strike her with unexpected force, unlocking something she's kept carefully contained for years. Emma blinks rapidly, nodding once, because she doesn't trust her voice. Then she slips away into the shadows, her mind already racing with preparations for what's to come. The kitchen door is unlocked, as she hoped it would be. Emma enters silently, listening for any sign of movement within the sleeping house. Hearing nothing, she makes her way carefully through the darkened saloon and up the back stairs that lead to the second floor. The hallway is empty, no sign of Edwards or any of the other guests. Emma moves quickly to Lucy's room first, easing the door open just enough to confirm the girl isn't there. She must still be with Edwards, which complicates matters. Sadie's room is similarly empty. Emma continues to her own room, the one now occupied by Hayes, knowing she needs to change clothes before anyone sees her. Her current dress, stained, with dirt from her fall and missing its usual pristine appearance, would immediately raise questions. Inside, she quickly selects a simple day dress from her wardrobe, changing as silently as possible. Her mind works furiously, planning what to tell Lucy and Sadie, how to get them away without arousing suspicion. Direct honesty seems the most efficient approach. Tell them the danger they're in, convince them to flee. But Emma knows from experience how difficult it can be to abandon the familiar, even when the familiar is harmful. Lucy, especially, might resist, clinging to Edward's false promises of a better life in California. As Emma buttons her dress, she hears footsteps in the hallway, light female footsteps that stop outside her door. A gentle knock follows. "Emma, are you in there?" Lucy's voice barely above a whisper. Emma opens the door to find Lucy standing there in her nightdress, her red hair loose around her shoulders, her expression troubled. "Lucy, what's wrong?" Emma asks, pulling her into the room and closing the door behind her. "I don't know," Lucy admits, hugging herself as if cold despite the warm night. "Mr. Edwards, he said things that didn't make sense, about taking me away tomorrow, about how I'd make him a fortune in California. And then he asked about you and Mr. Hayes, if I'd seen you talking, if you seemed close." She looks up at Emma, confusion evident in her young face. What did he mean? What's happening? Emma's heart sinks. Edwards is already putting the pieces together, already preparing to act. They may not have until dawn, let alone until Hayes returns with reinforcements. "Lucy, listen to me carefully," Emma says, taking the girl's hands in hers. "Edwards and his friends aren't what they seem. They're not offering you a position in a respectable establishment. They're traffickers. They buy and sell women, send them places where they'll never be found, where they'll be treated worse than you can imagine." Lucy's eyes widen, disbelief warring with dawning horror. "But he said I'd have fine dresses, my own room, wealthy clients." "He lied," Emma says firmly. "Men like that always lie. I found a notebook in Thompson's room. They've done this before in other towns. They've marked you and Sadie to be taken tomorrow. They're paying Mrs. Caldwell for you." "Mrs. Caldwell knows?" Lucy whispers, her face paling. "She's letting them take us." Emma nods grimly. "She's done it before. It's why some girls disappear without warning, why we're never allowed to mention their names afterward. Tears well in Lucy's eyes, the last of her naive hopes crumbling. What do we do? We leave, Emma tells her. Tonight, Mr. Hayes is creating a distraction at 4 o'clock. When it happens, you and I will get Sadie and go to the church. Pastor Matthews will protect us until Hayes returns with rangers who can arrest Edwards and his men. Rangers? Is Hayes? He was a ranger, Emma confirms. He came to Dustwater tracking these men, investigating their operation. He can help us, Lucy, but we have to trust him. Lucy wipes her tears, her natural resilience asserting itself. All right, what do I need to do? Get dressed, something simple, practical. Pack nothing. We can't risk being seen with bags. Then come back here and wait with me. I'll get Sadie when the time comes. Lucy nods, her expression resolute despite her fear. I'll be quick. When she's gone, Emma sinks onto the edge of the bed, the reality of what they're attempting settling heavily upon her shoulders. They're risking everything on Hayes's plan, on his promise to return with help. If he fails, if the Rangers don't believe him or refuse to come, Edwards will find them. And then Emma shakes her head, refusing to dwell on that possibility. Hayes will return. He must. And until then, her responsibility is clear. Protect Lucy and Sadie, get them to safety, keep them hidden until help arrives. She checks the small clock on the bedside table. 3:30, half an hour until Hayes creates his diversion. Half an hour to prepare for a flight that will either save them or condemn them, depending on forces largely beyond their control. Emma takes a deep breath, steadying herself. Then she begins gathering what little they can take without arousing suspicion. A shawl for each of them. A small amount of money she's kept hidden in the lining of her valise. A knife small enough to conceal in her sleeve, but sharp enough to defend them if necessary. Lucy returns at 3:45, dressed in a simple blue dress, her hair hastily arranged in a braid. Her face is pale but determined, her fear contained beneath a veneer of composure that makes Emma's heart ache. So young to have learned such necessary control. I'm ready, Lucy says quietly. Emma nods, checking the clock again. 5 minutes to 4. We need to get Sadie. Do you know which room she's in tonight? With Mr. Sullivan at the end of the hall, Lucy confirms. But Emma, what if she doesn't believe us? What if she doesn't want to come? It's a valid concern. Sadie is newer to the Silver Dove than Lucy, more desperate to believe in a better future elsewhere. The false promises Edwards and his companions offer might seem too tempting to reject. Then we make her come, Emma says firmly. Whether she understands now or later, we can't leave her to their mercy. Lucy bites her lip, but nods in agreement. Together, they move to the door, listening for any sound in the hallway beyond. Hearing nothing, Emma eases it open, peering out cautiously. The hallway is empty, the Silver Dove silent, save for the normal creaks and settling sounds of an old building. Emma gestures for Lucy to follow her, and they make their way silently towards Sullivan's room. Just as they reach it, a commotion erupts from downstairs. Shouts, the sound of running feet, a woman's startled cry. Hayes's diversion has begun. Emma doesn't hesitate. She throws open Sullivan's door to find Sadie sitting up in bed, the sheet clutched to her chest, her expression startled. Sullivan is nowhere to be seen, likely already responding to the disturbance below. Emma, what's happening? Sadie asks, confused by the intrusion. No time to explain, Emma says urgently. Get dressed quickly. We need to leave. Leave? Sadie repeats, not moving. I don't understand. The men you were with tonight, they're traffickers, Sadie. They're planning to take you and Lucy away, sell you to brothels in California where you'll never be free. Again, Mrs. Caldwell is helping them. Sadie's face pales, but doubt lingers in her eyes. How do you know this? Mr. Sullivan said he lied. Lucy interrupts, stepping forward. Please, Sadie. We don't have time to argue. The distraction. Downstairs won't last long. More shouts from below, the distinct smell of smoke beginning to drift up the stairwell. Whatever Hayes has done, it's creating the chaos they need. Sadie hesitates another moment, then nods, scrambling out of bed to pull on her clothes. Where are we going? The church, Emma answers, keeping her voice low despite the commotion. Pastor Matthews will hide us until help arrives. Help from who? Texas Rangers, Lucy says, helping Sadie with the buttons of her dress. Mr. Hayes was one. He's bringing them back to arrest Edwards and the others. Sadie's eyes widen, but she asks no more questions, focusing instead on dressing as quickly as possible. Within minutes, she's ready, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders, her feet hastily shoved into worn slippers. Stay close to me, Emma instructs them both. No matter what happens, stay together. Ready? They nod, their young faces set, with determination despite their fear. Emma leads them to the door, opening it cautiously despite the growing chaos downstairs. The hallway remains empty, the guests and most of the Silver Dove's residents apparently drawn to whatever spectacle Hayes has created. Emma gestures for Lucy and Sadie to follow her toward the back stairs, the same ones she used earlier to reach the kitchen. These stairs will allow them to avoid the main saloon where most of the commotion seems centered. They descend silently, Emma in the lead, testing each step before committing her weight to it. At the bottom, she pauses, listening carefully. The kitchen should be empty, but she can take no chances. Satisfied, she leads the girls through the darkened kitchen to the rear door. Outside, the night air is filled with the smell of smoke and the distant sounds of shouting. Whatever Hayes has done to create a distraction, it seems to be working perfectly. This way, Emma whispers, guiding Lucy and Sadie into the alleyway behind the Silver Dove. Stay in the shadows. Don't run unless I tell you to. They move quickly but cautiously, keeping close to the buildings that line the alley. Emma's plan is to circle around the main street, approaching the church from behind to avoid being seen. The fewer people who witness their flight, the better. As they near the end of the alley, Emma suddenly pulls the girls into a recessed doorway, pressing a finger to her lips in warning. Footsteps approach from the cross street, heavy, purposeful steps that can only belong to a man. Edwards appears at the mouth of the alley, his face illuminated briefly by the glow of a distant lantern. He's not looking their way, his attention focused on something outside their line of sight, but his very presence sends a chill through Emma. He should be at the front of the Silver Dove with the others, investigating the smoke and commotion. Instead, he's here, as if anticipating their escape route. For a heart-stopping moment, Emma thinks he'll turn, will peer into the darkness and spot them huddled in the doorway. But after a tense pause, Edwards continues past the alley, disappearing from view. Emma releases the breath she's been holding, feeling Lucy and Sadie do the same beside her. That was too close. Edwards is already suspicious, already looking. For them, instead of dealing with the distraction, they need to move quickly before he circuits back. Come on, she whispers, leading them deeper into the maze of alleys that run behind Dustwater's main street. The church lies just 2 blocks away, its simple wooden steeple visible above the surrounding buildings. Emma keeps them to the shadows, avoiding the pools of light cast by the few lanterns that illuminate Dustwater after dark. Twice they freeze as townspeople hurry past, drawn by the commotion at the Silver Dove, but no one notices 3 women pressed into the darkness. Finally, the church looms before them, its windows dark, the small parsonage beside it showing a single light in an upstairs window. Emma leads the girls to the rear entrance, a simple wooden door that she prays will be unlocked. It is. The door swings open silently, revealing the darkened interior of the church. Emma ushers Lucy and Sadie inside, then follows, closing the door carefully behind them. "What now?" Lucy whispers, her voice seeming unnaturally loud in the silent church. "We wait," Emma answers simply. "Hayes knows to look for us here. He'll come as soon as he can." The interior of the church is cool and still, smelling faintly of beeswax and old hymnals. Moonlight filters through the simple stained glass windows, casting pools of muted color across the wooden pews. Emma guides Lucy and Sadie toward the front of the church, where a small door leads to the vestry. "We should hide," she explains in a whisper. "If anyone comes looking, this will be the first place they check." The vestry is little more than a closet, lined with shelves holding communion supplies and the pastor's vestments. It's cramped, but large enough for the three of them to huddle together in relative comfort. Emma leaves the door slightly ajar, to admit air and light, and to allow them to hear if anyone enters the church. "Do you really think they'll look for us here?" Sadie asks, her voice trembling slightly. Emma nods grimly. Edwards was already searching the alleys instead of dealing with the fire. He suspects something. "What about Mr. Hayes?" Lucy whispers. "Will they suspect him too?" "Almost certainly," Emma admits, "but Hayes can take care of himself. He knows what he's doing. At least, she hopes he does." The plan had seemed reasonable in the urgency of the moment, but now, hiding in a church vestry with two terrified girls, Emma can't help but question the wisdom of their flight. If Hayes fails to return with the Rangers, if Edwards discovers their hiding place, if Mrs. Caldwell convinces the town that they're thieves who fled in the night, Emma pushes these thoughts aside. Second-guessing will not help them now. They've made their choice, cast their lot with Hayes and his promise of justice. All they can do is wait and hope he delivers on that promise. "Try to rest," she tells Lucy and Sadie. "It will be hours before Hayes returns, and we need to keep our strength up." The girls nod, shifting to find more comfortable positions in the cramped space. Emma positions herself nearest the door, her body between them and any potential threat. The small knife she took from her room rests in her palm, a meager defense but better than nothing. Time passes with excruciating slowness. Outside, the commotion at the Silver Dove eventually dies down, replaced by the normal sounds of a small town at night. Distant voices, the occasional passing wagon, a dog barking in the distance. Emma strains to hear any sound that might indicate someone approaching the church, but there is nothing. Lucy and Sadie eventually drift into uneasy sleep, their young bodies surrendering to exhaustion despite the circumstances. Emma remains vigilant, her mind replaying the events of the night, searching for missed details, alternative explanations, anything that might help them survive what's to come. Her thoughts return repeatedly to Hayes. Who is he, really? A former Texas Ranger, yes. But why is he so dedicated to this particular case? What drives him to risk his life for women he barely knows? There's something personal in his commitment, something Emma hasn't fully identified yet. And what awaits them if his plan succeeds? For Lucy and Sadie, perhaps a chance at a different life, away from Dustwater and the Silver Dove. But for Emma, at 26, with 10 years in a brothel behind her, what options remain? She has no family, no skills beyond those she's learned in her current profession, no place in respectable society. These thoughts chase themselves in circles until Emma's eyes grow heavy despite her determination to stay alert. The church is silent, the night passing without incident. Perhaps Hayes' diversion worked better than anticipated. Perhaps Edwards and his men are still occupied elsewhere. Perhaps they're safe, at least for now. Emma's chin drops to her chest, sleep overtaking her despite her best efforts. Her last conscious thought is of Hayes riding through the darkness, his promise to return echoing in her mind. A sound wakes her, soft but distinct in the silence of the church. Emma's eyes snap open, her hand tightening around the knife she still clutches. Beside her, Lucy and Sadie continue to sleep, unaware of whatever disturbance has pulled Emma from her own slumber. Footsteps. Someone is moving carefully through the main chamber of the church, approaching the vestry. Emma rises to a crouch, positioning herself directly in front of the partially open door. If it's Edwards or one of his men, they'll have to go through her to reach the girls. The footsteps stop just outside the vestry. A shadow falls across, the slice of moonlight visible through the door's opening. Emma raises her knife, prepared to strike at the first sign of threat. "Emma?" Hayes' voice, barely above a whisper, sends a wave of relief through her so intense it's almost painful. "Are you in there?" She pushes the door open to find him standing there, his expression grim but relieved. He's alone, his clothes disheveled, a streak of soot across one cheek. "You're back," Emma says, lowering the knife. "Did you find the Rangers?" Hayes shakes his head. "No time. Things have escalated. Edwards knows you're missing, knows I'm involved. He and his men are searching the town as we speak." Fear clutches at Emma's throat. "Then we need to leave. Now." "Yes." Hayes glances past her at the sleeping forms of Lucy and Sadie. "Wake them. We have horses waiting behind the church." Emma turns to rouse the girls, who wake with startled expressions that quickly turn to relief at the sight of Hayes. "You came back," Lucy says, her voice thick with sleep but tinged with wonder, as if she hadn't truly believed he would. "I promised I would," Hayes replies simply. "But we need to move quickly. There's no time to explain." The urgency in his voice spurs them to action. Within moments, they're following Hayes through the church and out the rear entrance, where 3 horses stand tethered to a hitching post. "I could only get 3, Hayes explains. "Lucy, you'll ride with Emma. Sadie, you're with me." Emma helps Lucy mount before swinging up behind her, grateful for the riding lessons she received as a girl, before her life took its cruel turn. Beside them, Hayes assists Sadie onto his own horse, then mounts behind her with practiced ease. "Where are we going?" Emma asks as Hayes leads them away from the church, keeping to the darkest streets. "Out of Dustwater," he replies grimly. "Edwards has too many connections here. We need to reach the ranger outpost directly." "How far?" 20 miles southwest. If we ride hard, we can be there by dawn." 20 miles through the darkness, with men hunting them and the ever-present danger of the harsh terrain. Emma feels Lucy stiffen in front of her, the girl's fear palpable. "We'll make it," Emma assures her, squeezing Lucy's waist gently. "Mr. Hayes knows what he's doing." Hayes leads them through the outskirts of Dustwater, avoiding the main roads where searchers might be waiting. The town gives way to open country, scrubland, dotted with mesquite and cacti, illuminated only by the waning moon. They ride in silence, pushing the horses as fast as prudence allows over the uncertain terrain. Emma's body aches from the unaccustomed exercise, but she says nothing, focusing instead on keeping Lucy secure in front of her. Beside them, Hayes rides with Sadie, his posture alert, his attention constantly scanning their surroundings for signs of pursuit. An hour passes, then another. The landscape changes subtly, the flat scrubland giving way to rolling hills that offer both concealment and the risk of ambush. Hayes leads them off the trail into a shallow arroyo, where the high banks provide some protection from prying eyes. "We'll rest the horses for a few minutes," he says, dismounting and helping Sadie down. "But we can't stay long." Emma slides from her saddle, then helps Lucy, whose legs buckle slightly after the long ride. The girl steadies herself against the horse, determination overcoming discomfort. "Are they following us?" Sadie asks, her voice hushed despite the miles between them and Dustwater. Hayes nods grimly. "Almost certainly. Edwards has too much at stake to let you go easily. And Mrs. Caldwell will have raised the alarm by now. Claimed you stole from her, probably." "But that's not true," Lucy protests. "Truth matters less than who tells the story first," Emma says, the bitterness of experience coloring her voice. Mrs. Caldwell has influence in Dustwater. People will believe her." Which is why we need to reach the Rangers, Hayes emphasizes. Once I can present the evidence, once you girls can testify to what was planned, Edwards and his operation will be finished. And Mrs. Caldwell? Emma asks, needing to know if Hayes's sense of justice extends to the woman who facilitated so much suffering. Her too, he promises, his expression hardening. Everyone involved will answer for what they've done. There's something in his tone, a personal edge that goes beyond professional commitment to justice. Emma studies him in the dim moonlight, the question that's been nagging at her finally taking form. This isn't just another case for you, is it? She asks quietly. There's something else driving you. Hayes is silent for a long moment, attending to his horse's bridle with unnecessary care. When he finally speaks, his voice is low, controlled, but with an undercurrent of old pain. My sister, he says simply, 18 years old, beautiful, trusting. A man came through our town, promising work in a fine hotel in Dallas. My parents needed the money. We all did after the war, so they let her go. He pauses, his hands stilling on the leather straps. I was away, still with the Rangers. By the time I got her letter, by the time I understood what had really happened, she was gone, shipped west like cargo. Did you find her? Lucy asks, her young face solemn in the moonlight. Hayes shakes his head once, the gesture containing a world of grief and rage. I tracked her as far as New Mexico territory, found women who'd been with her, who told me she'd been sold again, sent to California. I kept searching, but the trail went cold. That was 3 years ago. So, you left the Rangers, Emma concludes, understanding dawning, to hunt these men on your own terms. The Rangers have procedures, jurisdictions. They move too slowly for some things. Hayes finally looks up, his eyes meeting Emma's with an intensity that makes her breath catch. But I never stop being what I am, never stop believing in justice. The moment stretches between them, a connection forming that goes beyond their current circumstances. Emma sees in Hayes not just a rescuer or a former lawman, but a man shaped by loss and driven by purpose, a mirror in some ways of herself. Lucy's voice breaks the silence. I think I hear something. They all freeze, listening intently. At first, Emma hears nothing beyond the normal sounds of the night, wind through scrub brush, the occasional call of a night bird. Then it comes, to her, the distant rhythm of hoofbeats, multiple horses moving at speed. Hayes's expression darkens. Mounted pursuit. They've figured out which way we went. How? Sadie asks, fear evident in her voice. Doesn't matter now, Hayes says grimly. We need to move. They're coming from the east, so we'll head south, try to lose them in the hill country. They remount quickly, the brief rest forgotten. In the face of imminent danger, Hayes leads them out of the arroyo, turning away from their original course toward a line of low hills visible in the distance. The horses sense their rider's urgency, picking up their pace despite the earlier exertion. The sound of pursuit grows steadily closer. Emma estimates at least 4 riders, maybe more, moving fast and with purpose. Edwards has gathered a significant force, perhaps Sheriff Dawson among them, lending official sanction to the chase. They're gaining on us, Emma calls to Hayes, feeling Lucy's body tense against hers. Hayes glances back, his expression grim, but resolute. There's an old line shack about 3 miles ahead, abandoned but defensible. If we can reach it, we might stand a chance. And if we can't... His eyes meet hers across the darkness. Then we make our stand wherever we have to. The simple statement, delivered without drama, but with absolute conviction, tells Emma everything she needs to know about Thomas Hayes. He will not abandon them, will not surrender them to Edwards and whatever fate awaits in California. He will fight to the death if necessary, to keep his promise. They push the horses harder, racing across the open ground toward the distant hills. The line shack Hayes mentioned materializes as a dark shape against the landscape, a small, squat building, nestled in a natural depression that offers some protection from view. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit continue to grow closer. Emma can now distinguish individual horses, the occasional shout as their pursuers coordinate their efforts. She estimates they have minutes at most before they're overtaken. Hayes leads them directly to the shack, dismounting in a fluid motion and helping Sadie down before securing his horse to a stunted mesquite tree. Emma does the same, lifting Lucy from the saddle and guiding her toward the relative safety of the building. The line shack is simple, a single room with a dirt floor, abandoned long enough that dust covers every surface. A simple wooden table stands against one wall, two broken chairs beside it. The only window is covered with a piece of canvas rather than glass, and the door hangs slightly askew on rusted hinges. "Get inside," Hayes instructs, drawing his revolver and checking it with practiced efficiency. "Stay low, away from the window and door." Emma shepherds Lucy and Sadie into the shack, positioning them in the corner furthest from the entrance. Outside, Hayes moves with purpose, gathering loose stones to create a crude barricade near the front of the building. "What's he doing?" Lucy whispers, her eyes wide with fear. "Creating cover," Emma explains, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "A place to shoot from without exposing himself." Sadie makes a small, frightened sound. "They're going to kill us, aren't they?" "No." Emma takes both girls' hands in hers, her grip firm and reassuring. "Hayes won't let that happen, and neither will I." She releases them and moves to the door, where Hayes is now reinforcing the interior side of his barricade with the broken chairs and table. "What can I do?" she asks quietly. Hayes glances up, surprise and something like appreciation flickering across his face. "You know how to shoot?" "My father taught me before—" Emma doesn't finish the sentence. "Before he died, before her mother remarried, before her stepfather gambled away everything they had, including her." Hayes nods, understanding without requiring the details. He reaches into his boot and extracts a small derringer. A lady's gun, two-shot, easily concealed but deadly at close range. "Last resort," he says, pressing it into her hand. "If they get past me, if there's no other choice." Emma accepts the weapon, its weight unfamiliar but not entirely foreign in her palm. "How many do you think there are?" From the sound, 5 or 6. Hayes continues his preparations, his movements economical and precise. Edwards and his 3 companions for certain. Probably Sheriff Dawson, maybe one of Mrs. Caldwell's men. "Against one of you," Emma observes, the odds stark and unforgiving. Hayes pauses, meeting her gaze directly. "Against one ranger," he corrects, a quiet confidence in his voice that somehow makes the impossible seem merely difficult. Outside, the approaching riders have slowed, likely spotting the horses tethered near the shack. Emma can hear them spreading out, surrounding the small building in a classic maneuver designed to cut off escape. "Wilson!" Edward's voice calls from the darkness. "We know you're in there. Come out now, bring the girls, and no one needs to get hurt." Hayes positions himself at the window, peering carefully through a small tear in the canvas. 6 men, he confirms in a whisper, armed, spreading out to surround us. "What do we do?" Emma asks, crouching beside him. "Nothing yet. Let them make the first move." Edwards calls again, his voice carrying easily through the night air. "Be reasonable. Wilson, you're outnumbered and outgunned. This doesn't have to end badly for anyone." Hayes remains silent, watching the men's positions through the window. Emma returns to Lucy and Sadie, who huddle together in the corner, their faces pale with fear. "Stay down," she instructs them. "No matter what happens, stay down and keep quiet." "Hayes!" This time it's Sheriff Dawson's voice, adopting the official tone of law enforcement. "This is the law speaking. You're wanted for arson, assault, theft, and kidnapping. Surrender now and you'll receive a fair trial." Hayes makes a sound that might be a laugh if it contained any humor. "Dawson's in Edward's pocket," he murmurs to Emma. "Probably has been from the beginning." "What now?" she asks, the derringer clutched tightly in her hand. "We wait," Hayes replies grimly. "Let them come to us. Let them make the mistake." Outside, the men confer in low voices, occasionally visible as shadows moving against the night sky. They're coordinating, planning their approach. Emma's heart hammers in her chest, fear and determination warring for dominance. "Hayes," she says suddenly, a thought occurring to her. "She was quite insistent that it be delivered to you personally." Emma unfolds the letter, smiling at Lucy's careful handwriting. "Dear Emma, we have arrived at Miss Marshall's school. The journey was long, but Mr. Cooper was very kind and made sure we were comfortable. Miss Marshall is strict but fair. She says we will catch up quickly if we apply ourselves. There are 12 other girls here, some younger than us, some older. None ask questions about where we came from, which is a relief. Miss Marshall has arranged for us to share a room with a view of the mountains. They are so beautiful, Emma. Nothing like Texas at all. The air smells like pine trees and sometimes snow, even though it's summer. I miss you terribly. Sadie does too, though she tries to be brave and not show it. We both hope you will come visit when you can. Miss Marshall says you would be welcome, any time. Please tell Mr. Hayes, thank you again for arranging this. I never imagined such a place existed, where the past doesn't matter so much as what you learn today. With love, Lucy." Emma reads the letter twice, hearing Lucy's voice in each carefully formed word. The girl's resilience touches her deeply. This ability to embrace new circumstances, to find wonder in mountains and snow, to move forward despite all she's endured. "They sound happy," she says, carefully refolding the letter. "Rebecca will take good care of them," Hayes assures her. "She understands better than most how fragile new beginnings can be." Emma nods, tucking the letter into her pocket. "I'm grateful to her, and to you for making this possible." Hayes dismisses the gratitude with a slight shake of his head. "It's the least I could do. After all, without your testimony, Blackwood might never face justice for his crimes." They walk in companionable silence for a while, the river flowing steadily beside them, constant yet ever-changing, like the days that have brought them to this moment. Emma finds herself increasingly comfortable in Hayes's presence, appreciating his directness, his lack of pretense, his respect for her autonomy, despite his initial offer of partnership. He hasn't pressed her for an answer regarding that proposal, has instead given her space to consider her options. San Francisco remains a possibility. Reynolds has confirmed that his contacts there would welcome her skills in bookkeeping, a talent Emma developed keeping tracks of Mrs. Caldwell's complicated finances at the Silver Dove. The position would offer independence, anonymity, a chance to build a life untethered from her past. Yet Hayes's ranch lingers in her thoughts, a different kind of possibility, not just shelter or employment, but something more complex, a partnership based on mutual respect, shared experiences, perhaps eventually deeper feelings. Emma has known. Desire has simulated affection countless times for paying customers, but genuine connection has remained elusive, dangerous even, in the world she inhabited. The trial begins tomorrow, Hayes says, interrupting her thoughts. Reynolds says, "You'll likely be called to testify on the second day." Emma nods, her stomach tightening at the prospect. Depositions are one thing, private, controlled environments with only lawyers and officials present. The courtroom will be different, public, exposing, with Mrs. Caldwell and Blackwood watching her every expression, judging every word. "I'll be ready," she says, more confidently than she feels. Hayes studies her face, reading the anxiety beneath her composed exterior. "You don't have to face them alone, Emma. I'll be there. Reynolds, too." "I know." She appreciates the reassurance, though it doesn't entirely quell her apprehension. It's just strange, after so many years of silence, of pretending to speak the truth openly. "The truth has power," Hayes says simply, "more than lies in the end." Emma wonders if that's true. Her experience suggests otherwise, that lies often prevail. The truth rarely protects the vulnerable from those determined to exploit them. But perhaps this time will be different. Perhaps the system of justice that has so often failed women like her will, for once, work as intended. The courtroom the next morning is crowded, the case having attracted attention across Texas and beyond. Blackwood's trafficking operation, with its connections to powerful men in multiple states, makes for compelling headlines. Emma sits with Hayes and Reynolds near the front, conscious of the curious glances directed her way, the whispered speculations about her relationship to the defendants. Blackwood and his companions enter under guard, their expressions defiant. Despite the chains at their wrists and ankles, Dawson follows, his former sheriff's confidence reduced to resentful glares. Mrs. Caldwell appears last, her usual elegant attire replaced by simpler clothing that nonetheless conveys a certain imperious dignity. Her gaze sweeps the courtroom, pausing briefly on Emma before dismissing her with a slight curl of her lip. The prosecution opens with an overview of the charges, detailing the scale and scope of Blackwood's operation with methodical precision. Names of towns where women disappeared, dates of transactions, amounts exchanged for human lives. The evidence builds a damning picture of organized exploitation spanning years. Emma listens intently, connecting these broader patterns to her specific experiences at the Silver Dove. She recognizes dates when girls vanished, supposedly to better positions elsewhere. She recalls conversations overheard between Mrs. Caldwell and visitors who, in retrospect, were clearly Blackwood's associates, arranging transfers of merchandise. The defense attorneys counter with expected strategies, questioning the reliability of witnesses from disreputable backgrounds, suggesting that the women involved consented to relocate for better opportunities, implying that any illegality was the work of subordinates acting without their client's knowledge. Throughout this first day, Emma remains silent, observing the legal machinery at work, preparing herself for the role she'll play tomorrow. Hayes stays beside her, occasionally explaining legal terminology or procedural details in quiet asides. His presence grounds her, a reminder that she's no longer alone, facing the systems and structures that once controlled her life. That evening, in the quiet of her boarding house room, Emma reviews the notes she's made for her testimony. The facts are clear in her mind: dates, conversations, the contents of Thompson's notebook. But facts alone aren't what makes her testimony valuable. It's the context she provides, the human reality behind the clinical descriptions of trafficking routes and profit margins. A knock at her door interrupts her preparation. She opens it to find Mrs. Porter, the boarding house owner, looking uncomfortable. "There's a person asking for you," she says, her disapproval evident in every syllable. A woman. Not the sort we usually admit, but she claims it's urgent. Emma follows Mrs. Porter downstairs, curious and slightly apprehensive. In the small parlor, a woman waits, her rough clothing and weathered appearance marking her as someone from the margins of society. Emma recognizes her immediately. May, one of the older women from the Silver Dove. "Emma?" May rises as she enters, relief washing over her tired features. "Thank God. I wasn't sure they'd let me see you." "May?" Emma embraces her briefly, ignoring Mrs. Porter's scandalized expression. "What are you doing in Austin? How did you find me?" "I followed the trial news," May explains, her voice low. Everyone's talking about it, how you and Hayes exposed Blackwood's operation. I had to come, had to warn you. Warn me? Emma gestures for May to sit, taking a chair opposite her. About what? May glances nervously at Mrs. Porter, who hovers near the doorway. Could we speak privately? Mrs. Porter draws herself up indignantly. It is absolutely against house rules for... Please, Emma interrupts, her voice firm but polite. It's important. After a moment's hesitation, Mrs. Porter withdraws reluctantly, though Emma suspects she remains within earshot. What's happened? Emma asks once they're alone. May leans forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Caldwell's brother arrived in Dustwater 2 days after you left. Jasper Caldwell. He's worse than she ever was. Violent, connected to all sorts of criminal enterprises across Texas. Emma feels a chill of apprehension. She's heard Mrs. Caldwell mention her brother occasionally, always with a mixture of respect and wariness that suggested a complicated relationship. He was furious about her arrest, May continues, tore the Silver Dove apart looking for valuables, for records, anything he could salvage. Then he started asking questions about you, specific questions. What kind of questions? Where you might go, who you might know outside Dustwater. May's expression darkens. He was especially interested in your connection to Hayes. Said he had a score to settle with both of you. Emma processes this new threat, considering its implications for the trial, for her future plans. Did he follow you to Austin? I don't think so. I was careful. Took a roundabout route. May reaches for Emma's hand, squeezing it urgently. But he'll come, Emma. Men like Jasper Caldwell don't forgive what they see as betrayal of family. Thank you for the warning, Emma says, her mind already shifting to practical considerations. You shouldn't stay in Austin. It's not safe for you if he's looking for connections to me. May nods, her expression resolute. I'm heading to San Antonio tonight. My sister lives there, the respectable one who pretends not to know me. A bitter smile crosses her face. Even she can't turn away family in genuine danger. They speak. For a few minutes more, May providing what details she can about Jasper Caldwell, his appearance, his known associates, his reputation for holding grudges. Then Emma walks her to the boarding house door, pressing a few dollars into her hand. To help with her journey, take care of yourself, Emma, May says as they part. You're doing the right thing with this trial, but be careful. Men like Caldwell and Blackwood, they have long memories and longer reaches. After May leaves, Emma stands for a moment in the empty foyer, weighing this new information against her other concerns. She needs to tell Hayes, needs to ensure that both the Rangers and the federal marshals overseeing the trial security are aware of this potential threat. She finds Hayes at the small hotel where he's staying, just 2 blocks from her boarding house. His expression grows grave as she relays May's warning. Jasper Caldwell, he repeats, the name clearly registering. I know of him. Former Confederate. Officer, rumored to have connections to several bank robberies in East Texas, though nothing was ever proven. May said he's dangerous, that he's asking specific questions about us. Hayes nods, processing this information with the calm assessment of a man accustomed to threats. I'll speak with Reynolds tonight, make sure the court security is aware, and I'll arrange for additional protection for you during the trial. What about afterward? Emma asks, the question encompassing far more than immediate security concerns. If Caldwell is determined, a few days of protection won't deter him. Hayes meets her gaze directly. All the more reason to consider leaving Texas altogether. San Francisco might be the safest option, far from Caldwell's usual territory, large enough to disappear in. The suggestion is practical, sensible even. Yet Emma feels a surge of resistance to this solution. Running, hiding, disappearing, these have been the patterns of her life for too long. The past weeks in Austin, confronting her former captors through legal channels rather than fleeing them, have awakened something different in her. A desire to stand her ground, to claim her right to move forward on her own terms. Or, she says carefully, watching Hayes' expression, there's the ranch you mentioned. Would Caldwell look for me there? Hayes stills, her implied consideration of his earlier offer clearly catching him by surprise. The ranch is remote, but not unknown. Caldwell could find it eventually, if he were determined enough. But you would be there, Emma points out, and I imagine you're not without resources to defend yourself, to defend us. Us, Hayes repeats, the word hanging between them, weighted with possibility. Emma, are you saying you're considering my proposal? She takes a deep breath, organizing thoughts that have been forming gradually over the past weeks. I'm saying that I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to build a life based on fear, on hiding. San Francisco offers anonymity, yes, but also isolation. Your ranch, it offers something different, something I'm beginning to think I want. Partnership, Hayes supplies, his voice cautious, as if fearing to presume too much. Yes, Emma meets his gaze steadily. Not based on romance or conventional notions of marriage, I don't know if I'm capable of those things after everything, but based on mutual respect, shared purpose, perhaps friendship. Hayes considers her words, understanding their tentative nature, the careful boundaries they establish. That would be enough, he says finally. More than enough to begin with. Whatever grows beyond that would be at your pace, according to your comfort. The conversation pauses, both of them recognizing the significance of what they're discussing, not just practical arrangements for safety, but the foundation of a shared future. I haven't decided definitively, Emma clarifies. The trial, Jasper Caldwell, there's so much unresolved. But I wanted you to know I'm considering it, seriously considering it. Hayes nods, respecting her caution while clearly pleased by her openness to his proposal. Thank you for telling me, and regardless of what you decide, I'll do everything I can to ensure Caldwell poses no threat to you. They speak for a while longer, discussing practical security measures for the coming days of the trial. When Emma finally returns to her boarding house, her mind is calmer despite the new threat May has revealed. Options exist, choices remain available, and for the first time, those choices include the possibility of facing dangers alongside someone she's coming to trust rather than alone. The second day of the trial brings Emma's testimony. She wakes early, dresses with particular care in one of the new dresses purchased for this purpose, and walks to the courthouse accompanied by a ranger assigned by Reynolds for her protection. Hayes meets her at the entrance, his steady presence reassuring as they navigate the crowded hallways to the courtroom. Remember, he tells her quietly as they wait to be called, just tell the truth as you experienced it. Your story has power they can't diminish. When Emma's name is called, she rises with surprising steadiness, moving to the witness stand with measured steps. The oath is administered, her hand firm on the Bible despite her complicated relationship with faith after years at the Silver Dove. Then the questioning begins. The prosecutor leads her through her history, her arrival at the Silver Dove at 16, sold by her stepfather to settle gambling debts. Mrs. Caldwell's calculating exploitation, the gradual awareness of girls disappearing under suspicious circumstances, the arrival of Blackwood and his companions, the discovery of Thompson's notebook with its chilling inventory of acquisitions. Throughout her testimony, Emma maintains her composure, her voice clear and steady, even when describing the most difficult aspects of her experience. She's conscious of Mrs. Caldwell watching her with cold fury, of Blackwood's calculating assessment, of Dawson's resentful glare. But stronger than their scrutiny is her awareness of Hayes in the gallery, his expression a mixture of respect and encouragement that anchors her through the ordeal. The defense attorneys attack predictably, questioning her character, suggesting financial motives for her testimony, implying that a woman of her background cannot be considered reliable. Emma weathers these assaults with dignity, neither defensive nor apologetic about her past. When one attorney insinuates that she may have participated willingly in recruiting younger women for Blackwood's operation, her response is measured but firm. "Sir, I survived the Silver Dove by learning when to speak and when to remain silent. But I never facilitated the trafficking of any woman or girl. On the contrary, I risked my life to prevent Lucy Sanders and Sadie Miller from suffering." That fate, the jury, a mixture of serious-faced men ranging from merchants to farmers, watches her closely throughout. Emma can't read their thoughts, can't know whether they see her as a victim worthy of sympathy or a fallen woman whose testimony deserves skepticism. But she doesn't allow this uncertainty to shake her resolve. The truth is what matters, whether they choose to believe it or not. After nearly 3 hours on the stand, Emma is finally dismissed. Her legs tremble slightly as she returns to her seat beside Hayes, the prolonged tension taking its physical toll now that her testimony is complete. "You were magnificent," Hayes whispers as she sits. Clear, composed, completely credible. Emma manages a small smile, too drained to fully process his praise. "I just told the truth." Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. The trial continues with other witnesses, former girls from the Silver Dove who've been located by the Rangers, lawmen from other towns where Blackwood operated, experts who testify about the broader patterns of human trafficking across the West. Hayes himself takes the stand on the 4th day, detailing his investigation into Blackwood's operation, connected to his search for his missing sister. Emma watches him testify, struck by the controlled passion beneath his professional demeanor. This isn't just another case for him. It's personal, a mission that has shaped his life since his sister's disappearance. She understands now why he recognized something in her worth fighting for, worth offering a future to. They are, in different ways, survivors of the same injustice, lives disrupted by those who view human beings as commodities. On the 7th day of the trial, the jury retires to consider its verdict. The waiting is excruciating, hours stretching into a day, then another. Emma spends this time largely in her boarding house room, the increased security concerns following May's warning, making public appearances inadvisable. Hayes visits each evening, bringing updates from Reynolds about the jury's deliberations, slow but apparently thorough, and reports on security measures. No sign of Jasper Caldwell in Austin, but vigilance continues. Their conversations during these visits increasingly turn to future plans, to practical arrangements should Emma decide to accept his proposal. "The ranch needs work," he admits frankly. "I've maintained it minimally over the years, focused as I've been on tracking Blackwood. The cabin is sound but simple. Land's good though, water source, decent grazing, some timber." Emma finds herself engaged by these details, picturing the possibilities of such a place, not just as shelter or security, but as a genuine home, something she hasn't experienced since childhood. "I can learn," she says, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "About ranching, about making a home. I've always been a quick study." Hayes smiles, the expression softening his weathered features. "I don't doubt that for a moment." On the morning of the 3rd day of deliberations, word comes. The jury has reached a verdict. Emma dresses carefully in her most sober dress. Hayes escorts her to the courthouse, and they take their places in the now familiar gallery. The defendants are brought in, their expressions ranging from Blackwood's calculated confidence to Mrs. Caldwell's tight-lipped fury to Dawson's evident fear. The judge enters, the formalities are observed, and the jury files in, their faces unreadable. Emma holds her breath as the foreman rises. The verdict is read count by count, defendant by defendant, Guilty. Guilty on all charges. Every defendant, every count. The trafficking of women across state lines, the bribing of officials, the conspiracy to kidnap. Guilty. The courtroom erupts in murmurs, quickly silenced by the judge's gavel. Emma sits perfectly still, a strange numbness washing over her as she watches Mrs. Caldwell's face contort with rage, as Blackwood's confident mask finally slips to reveal the fury beneath, as Dawson seems to physically shrink with the weight of the judgment. "It's over," Hayes says quietly beside her, his hand finding hers and squeezing gently. "They can't hurt anyone else." But Emma knows it isn't truly over. Justice for her, for Lucy and Sadie, for the other women from the Silver Dove, yes, that has been served as well as the legal system allows. But there are other women scattered across brothels in California and beyond whose locations remain unknown. There's Hayes' sister, still missing after 3 years. There's Jasper Caldwell, a new threat emerging from the shadows of the old. The sentencing is swift, the judge apparently having prepared for this outcome. Blackwood and his close associates received 20 years of hard labor, Mrs. Caldwell 15 years. Dawson, 10 years plus permanent disgrace from any position of public authority. The punishments are severe by any standard, a clear message about the seriousness with which the court views these crimes. Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, Reynolds approaches them, his expression satisfied but solemn. "Justice served, as much as it can be," he says, echoing Emma's earlier thoughts. "You two made this possible." "What happens now?" Emma asks. "With the other women? The ones already trafficked?" Reynolds sighs, the weight of incomplete justice evident in his demeanor. "We'll keep looking. Blackwood's records give us starting points, but finding them all, it may take years if it's possible at all." Hayes nods, understanding the reality behind Reynolds' cautious assessment. "And my sister, any new leads from Blackwood's testimony?" "Nothing specific yet," Reynolds admits. "But with the federal authorities now fully engaged, there's hope. More resources, broader jurisdiction." They discuss logistics for a while longer. When Emma will be free to leave Austin, immediately her testimony being complete. What protection might be available given the threat from Jasper Caldwell, a ranger escort to wherever she chooses to go courtesy of Reynolds. The final paperwork required to close the case. As they part, Reynolds pauses, looking at Emma with genuine respect. "Miss Wilson, whatever you decide to do next, know that you've done a remarkable thing here. Many women will be spared because of your courage." The praise touches Emma unexpectedly, bringing tears to eyes that remained dry throughout the verdict. And sentencing. For so long, her existence has been defined by survival, by endurance rather than achievement. The idea that her actions might have created something positive, might have spared others from suffering similar to her own, feels like a revelation, a new lens through which to view her past and potentially her future. Back at the boarding, the house, Emma sits by her window, watching the busy Austin street below as evening approaches. The verdict has brought a certain closure, yet she feels strangely unsettled, poised between endings and beginnings. The decision she's been contemplating throughout the trial can no longer be postponed. San Francisco or the ranch, independence or partnership, a fresh start among strangers or a new beginning with Hayes, a man who knows her past and values her. Nonetheless, a knock at her door interrupts these thoughts. Hayes stands in the hallway, his expression serious. "Reynolds sent word," he says without preamble. "Jasper Caldwell has been spotted in Austin, arrived by train this morning." Emma absorbs this news, feeling strangely calm despite its ominous implications. "So he's found us." "He's found Austin, at least," Hayes corrects. "No indication he knows exactly where you're staying. Reynolds has doubled the guards around this boarding house and my hotel, just in case." "How long can that continue?" Emma asks practically. The Rangers can't assign permanent protection, not with their other responsibilities. No, Hayes agrees, which means we need to make decisions sooner rather than later. He hesitates, then continues carefully. Emma, I know you haven't had time to consider all your options fully, but given this development, I need to ask, have you made your choice, San Francisco or the ranch? Emma finishes for him, the decision crystallizing in this moment of crisis. Your ranch, our partnership. Hayes's expression shifts, relief, and something warmer replacing his earlier concern. You're certain? I don't want you choosing based solely on fear of Caldwell. I'm not, Emma assures him, recognizing the truth of her words as she speaks them. Caldwell may have forced the timing of my decision, but not the decision itself. I've been moving toward this choice since Austin, perhaps even since that first night you created a diversion to help us escape the Silver Dove. Hayes studies her face, searching for any hint of doubt or reluctance. Finding none, he nods, a decisiveness entering his posture. Then we leave tonight. Reynolds can arrange an escort to get us clear of Austin, after which we'll take a less obvious route to the ranch. Tonight, Emma repeats, though the urgency makes sense given Caldwell's presence in the city. If you need more time to prepare... No, Emma interrupts. Tonight is fine. I have little to pack. Her life in Austin has been as temporary as her existence at the Silver Dove, though for very different reasons. The dresses purchased for court appearances, the few personal items acquired during her stay, all can be gathered in minutes. I'll make the arrangements, Hayes says. Be ready at 11. The streets will be quieter then, easier to spot anyone following. He leaves to coordinate with Reynolds, and Emma begins her simple preparations. As she folds her dresses into the small valise provided by Mrs. Rodriguez weeks earlier, she reflects on the strange journey that has brought her to this moment. From captivity at the Silver Dove, to testimony in a federal trial, to imminent departure for a ranch she's never seen, with a man she's known for less than 2 months. Under normal circumstances, such a decision might seem reckless, even foolhardy. But Emma's circumstances have never been normal. Her life was derailed at 16, her choices constrained by forces beyond her control. Now, at 26, she's reclaiming agency in the best way available to her, choosing a future that offers dignity, purpose, and the company of someone who sees her clearly and values her nonetheless. At precisely 11, Hayes knocks softly on her door. Emma is ready, her valise packed, her borrowed shawl wrapped around her shoulders against the night chill. Mrs. Porter, informed of their departure by Reynolds himself, watches disapprovingly from the foot of the stairs as they descend. Most irregular, she mutters, though she doesn't actively object. Reynolds's authority carries weight, even with those who might otherwise protest a woman leaving in the night with a male companion. Outside, 2 rangers wait with horses, Hayes's own mount and a gentle mare for Emma. A 3rd horse carries basic supplies for the journey. The streets are largely deserted at this hour, the few pedestrians hurrying about their own business, paying little attention to the small group assembling outside the boarding house. Thompson will ride with you as far as the county line, Hayes explains as he helps Emma mount. Reynolds will join us there with additional men for the first leg of the journey. After that, we'll continue alone, taking a roundabout route to avoid any pursuit. Emma nods, settling into the saddle with more confidence than she felt during their frantic escape from Dustwater. That night seems a lifetime ago, though barely 6 weeks have passed. 6 weeks that have transformed her circumstances completely. They ride quietly through Austin's darkened streets, the rangers alert for any sign of surveillance or threat. Emma finds herself scanning doorways and alleys as well, her senses heightened by awareness of Jasper Caldwell's presence in the city. Hayes rides close beside her, his posture relaxed, but his attention constantly moving, assessing. At the city limits, Reynolds awaits with 3 additional rangers. The captain's expression is serious as he approaches Hayes and Emma. "No sign of Caldwell since earlier today," he reports. "But that doesn't mean he's given up. Man like that, with his sister facing 15 years of hard labor, he's bound to be looking for someone to blame." "We'll be careful," Hayes assures him. "The route I've chosen isn't obvious, and once we reach the ranch, we'll have advantages." "Familiar. Territory defensible position." Reynolds nods, acknowledging the strategy. "I'll keep men watching for Caldwell here in Austin for a few days. Make it seem like you're still in the city. That should buy you some time." The captain turns to Emma then, his weathered face softening slightly. "Miss Wilson, it's been an honor. What you did in that courtroom took exceptional courage." "Thank you, Captain," Emma replies, touched by his respect. "For everything." With final arrangements confirmed, they set out into the darkness, traveling north by northwest toward Hayes's ranch. The increased escort remains with them through the night and the following day, vigilant for any sign of pursuit. Emma, unaccustomed to such extended riding, focuses on enduring the physical discomfort, grateful for Hayes's occasional suggestions to improve her posture or balance. By sunset of the first day, they've covered considerable ground, putting Austin far behind them. They make camp in a small grove of trees near a creek, the rangers establishing a perimeter while Hayes helps Emma dismount from her horse. "You're doing well," he tells her, noting her weariness but also her determination. Most people unused to long rides would be complaining by now. "I've endured worse discomforts," Emma says simply. Hayes acknowledges this with a brief nod, understanding that her reference encompasses far more than physical pain. "We'll rest here tonight. Tomorrow we part from Reynolds' men and continue west, then north. 2 more days should bring us to the ranch." The rangers depart at dawn, the following morning, returning to their duties with Reynolds' assurance that he'll send word if Caldwell's movements suggest any threat. Emma and Hayes continue alone, their pace more measured now that immediate. Pursuit seems less likely. This new phase of their journey brings a different quality to their interaction, more personal, less focused on immediate danger. As they ride side by side through the Texas landscape, Hayes begins sharing stories of his time as a ranger, of the good men he served with, and the principles he still believes in despite his departure from formal service. Emma, in turn, finds herself speaking of earlier memories. Her childhood on a small farm before her father's death, her mother's remarriage to the gambling stepfather whose debts eventually led to Emma's sale to Mrs. Caldwell. She's never spoken of these things to anyone, has kept them locked away as reminders of a life lost beyond recovery. Sharing them with Hayes feels strangely liberating, a reclamation of parts of herself long suppressed. On the evening of the 3rd day, they crest a low ridge, and Hayes reins in his horse, gesturing ahead. There it is, home, such as it is. Emma follows his gaze to the valley below, where a small cabin stands near a winding creek, surrounded by open grazing land dotted with a few cattle. A barn and corral complete the modest ranch, which nestles against a backdrop of rolling hills. Covered in oak and mesquite. "It's beautiful," she says sincerely, struck by the peaceful setting, so different from the dusty streets of Dustwater or the crowded thoroughfares of Austin. Hayes looks pleased by her reaction, though he tempers it with practicality. "It needs work. I haven't been here in months, chasing leads on Blackwood, but the foundations are solid." They ride down into the valley as twilight deepens, the first stars appearing in the clear Texas sky. Emma feels a curious mixture of exhaustion and anticipation as they approach the cabin. Journey's end and beginning, combined in this simple wooden structure that will now be her home. Hayes dismounts first, then helps Emma from her horse. She stands for a moment, taking in her surroundings more fully, the scent of grass and earth, the sound of water in the nearby creek, the vast openness of the sky above. After years confined, within the walls of the Silver Dove, the spaciousness feels almost overwhelming. "Let me check inside first," Hayes says, drawing his revolver more from habit than immediate concern. "It's been empty a while." He returns moments later, holstering his weapon. "All clear, dusty, but otherwise just as I left it." Emma follows him into the cabin, which consists of two main rooms, a larger living area with a stone fireplace and rough-hewn table and chairs, and a smaller bedroom visible through an open doorway. Simple, even austere, but clean and solidly built. "It's not much," Hayes says, watching her take in the space. "Not compared to what you might have had in San Francisco." "It's perfect," Emma replies, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. The cabin is humble, true, but it represents something she's never had, a place that belongs to her by choice rather than circumstance, a home rather than a prison. Hayes builds a fire while Emma unpacks the few provisions they've carried. They work together easily, establishing a natural rhythm that suggests the partnership they've discussed. The simple meal they share by firelight feels like a ceremony, the first breaking of bread in what will become their home. "Tomorrow we'll get everything properly cleaned and organized," Hayes says as they finish eating. "Make it livable again." Emma nods, already mentally cataloging what needs to be done. Scrubbing floors, airing bedding, checking for repairs. Skills learned managing the domestic side of the Silver Dove will serve her well here, though employed for her own benefit rather than others' profit. "The bedroom is yours," Hayes adds, gesturing toward the smaller room. "I'll sleep out here until we can build proper separate quarters or..." He trails off, leaving unspoken alternatives that might develop with time. "Thank you," Emma says simply, appreciating both the consideration and the absence of pressure or expectation. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Emma listens to the sounds of her new world, wind in the trees, distant cattle lowing, the occasional call of a night bird. So different from the human noises that filled her nights at the Silver Dove, she sleeps deeply for the first time in years, uninterrupted by the anxiety that has been her constant companion. Dawn brings renewed purpose. Hayes rides out to check the property's boundaries and the small herd of cattle, while Emma tackles the cabin's interior. Hours of scrubbing, dusting, and arranging transform the neglected space into something approaching comfortable. She finds unexpected satisfaction in this simple labor, work that creates rather than depletes, that builds something of value. When Hayes returns midday, he seems almost startled by the change in the cabin. "You've been busy," he observes, looking around at the now clean floors and organized shelves. "It feels good to create order," Emma explains, "to make something better through my own efforts." Hayes's expression softens with understanding. "That's the heart of it, isn't it? Building something worthwhile with our own hands." The days that follow establish patterns that gradually solidify into a shared life. Hayes teaches Emma about the ranch operations, caring for livestock, maintaining fences, managing the small garden he'd started years earlier, and she now expands with enthusiasm. Emma brings organizational skills and practical efficiency to their partnership, transforming the bachelor existence Hayes had maintained into a genuine home. They develop routines, coffee shared at dawn before the day's work begins, meals taken, together discussing accomplishments and plans, evenings by the fire where Hayes whittles wood, while Emma mends clothing or reads from the small collection of books he owns. Simple pleasures that stand in stark contrast to the artificial excitements of the Silver Dove. Letters arrive occasionally. Updates from Reynolds about the continued imprisonment of Blackwood and his associates. No sign of Jasper Caldwell since Austin. News from Lucy and Sadie about their progress at Rebecca's school. Each connection to their shared past reinforces rather than undermines the foundation they're building. Their partnership remains practical at first, defined by shared work and mutual respect rather than romantic attachment. Hayes never presses for more than Emma offers, and she appreciates this patience as she learns to trust her own feelings, to distinguish genuine emotion from the performance required at the Silver Dove. The first winter brings new challenges, preparing the ranch for cold weather, ensuring sufficient supplies, adjusting to long evenings confined together in the cabin. During one such evening, as a rare Texas snowfall blankets the land outside, Emma finally asks the question that has lingered since their first meeting. "Your sister," she says softly, watching Hayes's hands pause in their work. "Tell me about her." Hayes is silent for a long moment, then begins speaking of Sarah, 18 years old when she disappeared, bright and determined, hoping to use the hotel job to save money for teacher training. His voice remains steady, but Emma sees the grief in his eyes, the guilt that has driven his pursuit of Blackwood and men like him. "I should have been there," he concludes, "should have recognized the danger before she left." Emma moves to sit beside him, taking his weathered hand in hers. "We can't change the past," she says gently, "but we honor those we've lost by how we live now." Hayes studies their joined hands, then meets her gaze. "Is that what we're doing here? Honoring those we couldn't save by saving ourselves? Perhaps, and maybe saving others too, in different ways." Emma thinks of Lucy and Sadie safely studying in Colorado, of the women who won't be trafficked because Blackwood's operation has been dismantled. Small victories against enormous suffering, but victories nonetheless. That night marks a shift in their relationship, not dramatic but significant, a deepening of connection beyond practicality into something more profound. When Hayes's hand brushes hers now, she doesn't flinch away. When conversation turns personal, she doesn't retreat behind the walls built during her years at the Silver Dove. Spring arrives with fresh growth, literal and metaphorical. The garden flourishes under Emma's care, the cattle multiply with new calves, and the partnership between Emma and Hayes evolves into genuine affection, tentative but strengthening with each passing day. On a warm evening, as they sit on the porch watching sunset paint the hills with gold, Hayes asks if she regrets her choice. If the ranch, this life with him, has been worth the risks taken. Emma considers the question seriously, as she considers everything now that choices are truly hers to make. "I don't regret it," she says finally. "For the first time since I was 16, I'm living rather than just surviving. That alone makes everything worthwhile." Hayes nods, understanding the significance of her words. They watch the stars emerge. In comfortable silence, two people who have found in each other not completion, but complementary strength. A partnership forged in shared struggle and sustained by mutual respect. It isn't perfect. The past still shadows them both. But here, in this place they've built together, Emma has found something she thought forever lost. Not just freedom from captivity, but freedom to become herself, to grow beyond survival into genuine living. And that, she knows with quiet certainty, is the truest form of justice. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.